Hi there. It's producer Patrick here with a brief show note. First and foremost, if this is your first episode of Pynchon Pals, a very warm welcome. Thanks for stopping by. We figure some folks may be hopping aboard as we move on to a new book, so if you like what we're doing here, we encourage you to go back and listen to our previous episodes on V, Thomas Pynchon's first book, which we just finished reading for the first time. That said, if you want to just start listening here, that's fine too. We think this serves as a pretty good introduction. If you are a returning listener and want to support the show, you can now do so at patreon.com/PynchonPals. For $5 a month, patrons will receive bonus episodes of the podcast starting this month, February, with our upcoming episode on Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, a film that was loosely inspired by V. We had a great time chatting about the movie, and we're excited to share it with our supporters. So if you'd like to hear that, head over to patreon.com/PynchonPals and sign up. Thanks a lot, and on with the show. Good evening, and welcome to Pynchon Pals, a podcast about finally reading Thomas Pynchon. My name is Patrick Fiorilli, and I'm joined, as always, by Andrew Tillett.
It's season 2, y'all. We haven't talked about this. Are we considering this season 2?
It might be. Yeah, season 2, volume 2, session 2. Whatever.
Our seasons will not be of equal length.
Yeah, and that was the voice of Duri Long, who's also here. Thanks.
Good evening.
On tonight's episode, we are discussing chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Thomas Pynchon's. Was that a drum roll?
That was a drum roll. I don't know that the microphone
That's going to come in
up.
Great over the microphone.
Yeah, I know it will.
We're discussing those chapters of Thomas Pynchon's The Crying of Lot 49, a book my esteemed co-hosts are reading for the very first time.
But you are reading for the second time.
But I'm reading for the second time. This is officially not my first or my second rodeo with Thomas Pynchon. This is my third rodeo with Thomas Pynchon. And I gotta say, it's good to be back in the saddle. Coming back to Lot 49, it's like, oh yeah, it's kind of like V, but fun.
Has it taken on new meaning for you since you've read V?
A little bit, yeah. There's I knew at least, and we'll get into this, there were at least some sort of V references that I knew were coming in this book, but there's a few more that I did not recall originally showed up in V that we'll get to as we move along. What did y'all think? Just generally coming into this very second Thomas Pynchon book.
I am trying very hard to see this as like a distinct book from V, but I am struggling a little bit because I do feel like there's a lot of connections and I'm like picking up on similar themes or names or imagery. So it feels very much sort of a piece with V, but it's such a slim volume that like we're already halfway through just with the first 3 chapters, which feels not of a piece with V. So I'm interested to see kind of how the slim volume evolves.
Is there an unofficial drinking game of how many times we say slim volume while addressing Crying of Lot 49?
I was going to say, maybe pitching this idea, not this episode because it's the morning, but maybe one of the episodes we do a shot every time there's a direct allusion to something in V. Like
yeah, there you go. Like as we're reading or as we're talking in the episode.
As we're talking in the episode, not like at home on your own time.
I mean, either could work, honestly. Andrew, how does it feel to come to the new Pinch?
It's exciting. I think, sometimes you like read like a series, like 1, 2, 3, etc., and you're really in the world. But I feel like I don't normally read 2 distinct books by the same author back to back like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So
not since like college anyway. I feel like in college I took some classes on like, oh yeah, we're just reading a bunch of stuff by this author, but I would agree that it's not the usual way I read books in my free time.
Yeah, the only times this ever happens is when I like an author has a new book out that I want to read and the library is backlogged on that, so I get something else instead and then get the new book in like quick proximity. But yeah, I was the same with Duri. I was like trying to not view everything in the lenses of the themes we've talked about in V. And
yeah, I think
some wins and losses there.
Yeah, I think luckily it pretty quickly establishes a sort of distinct voice that is at one time, it's at once a little more like grounded in like dialogue and back and forth and feels almost more, I don't know. Duri and I just watched His Girl Friday, the like newspaper, like rapid dialogue. What do you call, what's that type of comedy called? Not a slapstick comedy. I brought this up and now I'm totally forgetting. A screwball comedy. And I do feel like this book has a little bit more of a screwball comedy edge to it, where characters are just kind of like zipping and quipping a little bit more. And at the same time, I think there's more frequent kind of digressions into these long, singular paragraph over multiple pages meditations on imagery and a character's kind of internal thoughts and feelings. And both of those seem very distinct from V, in my opinion.
I noticed that also, like a shift in the writing style to sort of like very lengthy sentences that almost feel like stream of consciousness a little bit, or like hop from one thought to another without like exactly a grammatical transition, if you will. I feel like I was noticing those a lot more frequently than we saw in V.
Far more often reading this book, I feel like I'm going like, where's the verb in this sentence?
Yeah, I was like, where are we in this line of thought?
What is the subject and object and verb?
Sure.
I need to like bust out my, grade school sentence diagramming to figure out some of this shit, but it's good. I like it.
I guess the first two chapters are so like sparse and plot based compared to especially the end of where we were with V, where it's just like Oedipa did this, Oedipa did that, and then the third chapter really opens up in a way that I think is more what I was expecting. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see what the next three chapters do. I assume they're going to be more open than that.
Yeah, and
to the third chapter, but
it's there's 6 chapters total. So spoiler alert, we'll be doing 4 and 5 next time. So because they're a little lengthier, and then 6 is once again, I think, on the shorter side. But should we jump into the first chapter here?
Let's dive in.
Let's dive into the hot summer, the swingin' summer of 1960 something or other in Southern California. Oedipa Maas comes home from a Tupperware party to discover she's been named the quote-unquote executrix of the estate of her on and off fling, the late LA real estate big shot, Pierce Inverarity. She gets a call in the middle of the night from her fringe psychotherapist, Dr. Hilarious, petitioning her to take part in an LSD study on suburban housewives. And during a meeting with her lawyer, suggested by her husband, the local radio DJ, Wendell Mucho Maas, Oedipa muses on the image, inspired by a Remedios Varo painting, of Rapunzel, locked in her tower, weaving a tapestry that covers the world. New character. I think at one point, offhandedly, I remarked to Duri that the main character of Crying of Lot 49 is a little bit like if Rachel Owlglass and Herbert Stencil were the same person. Like if you mash those two characters together, I think you get someone who sort of resembles Oedipa.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a smart observation. You've got sort of the worldliness of Oedipa, the sort of down to earthness, and then the paranoia of Stencil.
Yeah, at one point Oedipa kind of describes herself as curious, and I think that is a really good word for her. She is someone who kind of doesn't leave well enough alone and wants to ask questions and kind of get to the bottom of things, which puts her in league with your classic kind of hard-boiled detective character or film noir protagonist who like just can't give it a rest and keeps digging even when, they keep getting punched in the nose for it.
Yeah, and unlike Stencil, maybe she doesn't seem to have like a clear quest at the outset of this. And is sort of driven, I felt like at least like we see the development of her quest as she gets curious about things or as things sort of like happen to her. She doesn't like start off with a mission, if you will.
Yeah, what do we make of her introduction? She's getting back from a Tupperware party. She is like a 1960s housewife.
A Tupperware party where she had there was too much kirsch in the fondue, so she's like a little drunk.
Which Tupperware parties were still a thing? I like the idea of it. I like the door-to-door salesman aspect.
Should we gloss what a Tupperware party is for people in case they didn't look it up?
I mean, it's what it sounds like.
Which is?
You have a party with your friends and like a Tupperware salesperson comes and sells you Tupperware while you're at the party.
Have you ever experienced a Tupperware party? Do they still exist?
Not a Tupperware party, but like I feel like I've definitely experienced various similar types of parties where like a jewelry party where like you have a party and like someone comes and sells you jewelry, or like a soap party. I definitely attended one of those as growing up.
Really? Okay, I didn't think this kind of thing existed at all. I mean, the door-to-door salesman is such a thing of the past. I feel like the only time you get your friends together to tell them about like selling something is when you're pitching your podcast or when you're
there it is.
Like part of a multi-level marketing scheme. Like I do know some people who've been in the multi-level marketing who there have been like party-esque get-togethers where we are solicited.
I do think there's definitely a connection between this and the multi-level marketing situation, like cosmetics at gatherings. But I do think like maybe just in like suburbia, there's like a little bit of a culture of like small or like local businesses. And by small business, I mean like one or two people like running something, like your friend who started a small business making jewelry or soap. And then you like support them by holding a gathering where
and
people,
then if you can convince two other
sale.
people to put in an order for this soap, then you can get 3 bars of soap for free at your next purchase.
But yeah, I feel like I've definitely attended a few events like this growing up.
Wow. Is it? Fascinating. I'll have to think about this. I might text you later and with more questions.
We can discuss further.
This is like, I mentioned at one point that I like went to the circus as a kid, and Duri was like, what do you mean you went to the circus? And I was like, the circus. There were like clowns and elephants. And Duri was like, did you grow up in like 1903 or something? Like, and I was like, no, the circus.
Is this an East Coast elitism creeping up in us, Patrick? Like, is this like a Midwest versus East Coast thing?
Maybe.
Yeah, do you not do Tupperware parties on the East Coast?
No, we just go to circuses.
I can't imagine Barnum and Bailey's didn't come to Kansas City. There's no way. There's an NFL team there.
Definitely thought circuses ended a long time ago. Fairs definitely still active, but circuses,
to be fair,
circus.
I do think like Barnum and Bailey was not long for this world. Shortly after I attended,
I really thought the elephant thing really like brought down the circus.
Yeah, I mean
I'll tell you this: the elephant brought down the house when I was there. Shit was fire.
I've been to the circus with elephants and like big animals a couple of times, but yeah, I mean the circus, the Barnum and Bailey style circus, definitely went the way of like SeaWorld, although SeaWorld still exists. But like people are less cool at big animals in that type of captivity. But like Cirque du Soleil still exists. Cirque du Soleil is going so strong. Shin Yun is basically a circus. It's going very strong.
There was that book that came out about elephants in the circus.
Is that water for elephants?
Water for elephants. Thank you. I was looking up drunk elephants. I knew it had something to do with like a liquid and elephants.
Drunk elephants is what happened in
reference.
V.
Yeah, that's also in V.
Things are clicking now. Yeah, I feel like that book really like put the nail in the coffin of the circus industry a little bit.
Hot take.
Maybe the nail was already in the coffin and that book was just a retrospective. Who's to say?
So anyways, Oedipa's back from a Tupperware party, which certainly existed in 1960 something.
And maybe still today
does. She's watching the TV. Far more people watching the TV in this book already than in V. And maybe that's
true.
just because a lot of the characters in V like couldn't afford TVs or were in like 1898 or whatever. But
are we like fast forward? Remind me, like this seems, we don't have an exact year this is taking place, but it feels a little bit later than V.
Yes. So V was written in the early 60s, I believe, and then was published in 1963.
But took place
in 1956.
58. And this book feels like it takes place in the 60s. So I wonder if even like that small time jump is leading to like more prevalence of television.
Yeah, I definitely think that is happening here.
I also felt like there's definitely this picture, I mean, Tupperware party included, like being painted of sort of like suburban California as like a very different place than New York City.
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with, like a housewife in California versus like wannabe beatniks for the most part. So they had, what's his face watched TV a lot. McFergus watches TV a lot. That was his whole thing, is that he only sat on the couch and watched TV, and he invented a remote control.
That's
to go
true.
off
And
when he fell
Benny
asleep.
watched some like old westerns on TV at one point.
Fergit's Mixolydian.
Yep.
There's a lot of just watching media in general. Like we get 2 exceptionally long passages of watching a movie and watching a play.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I know we're not to chapter 3 yet, but I was shocked that this large of a portion of such a small book was spent on the plot of this convoluted play. We can circle back to that, but I was floored.
Yeah, you remember when I said that Jacobean drama would come back in a big way in Crying of Lot 49? Here it is. I kind of forgot that it happened so early in the book, although I guess the book is nearly halfway done. As Oedipa is watching TV, and I had to look up some of these, like, Huntley and Brinkley. Like, sometimes TV shows are just named, and, like, yes, I guess you would know what that was if it was, if you were in 1966. But I had to look up what Huntley and Brinkley was, and, like, several other references here.
What is the modern equivalent of Hunter and Brinkley? Is it like a Rosolian Isle? Is it like a Bones? What are we talking here?
It's like a little like short form news thing. So I think it was only it was like a 15 or 30 minute news program. So I think the equivalent would be something like she's listening to Up First by NPR News, or like New York Times The Daily.
Okay.
Maybe that's not true. If you know, I haven't looked up any episodes of Huntley and Brinkley, but that's what I assumed. But we do get our first V reference here, right in this very first scene. Did y'all catch it?
Was it the kazoo concerto?
The Vivaldi kazoo concerto. Yeah.
Take a shot.
I do think it's funny that Thomas Pynchon was like, and I know exactly what I'm going to bring back on the second page of this book.
Kazoo concerto.
I wasn't done with the kazoo concerto. I thought it was a great joke and underappreciated sort of 5/6 of the way through V.
Yeah, and that was maybe we should remind our listeners where the kazoo concerto came up in V.
I believe that came up at the party with Flip and Flop in DC.
We were reviewing all the like weird people at the party,
and there was one
included,
guy with a kazoo who was doing the kazoo concerto.
But it wasn't Boyd Beaver.
Maybe it was.
I don't know. I was trying to remember that. I can look back.
Patrick, how big, maybe we talked about this early on and I just don't remember, how big was V when it came out? Like, would people have been picking up The Crying of Lot 49 like because they were Pynchon fans at that point, or was it just the second book by an author that likely people were reading this for the first time, or you know what I mean? Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I want to say V was like fairly popular because it won. What did it win? Did it win like a? It was nominated for a National Book Award, and it won the William Faulkner Foundation Award for Best Debut Novel. And I think it got like some very positive write-ups in, the New York Times and elsewhere. So I think V kind of put Pynchon on the map. And by Pynchon's admission, like, he wrote The Crying of Lot 49 as a kind of, I think he called it like an overstuffed short story because he needed the money and to like fulfill a publishing contract. Basically, they were like, give us 2 more books. He was working on Gravity's Rainbow, and Crying of Lot 49 was something that he kind of shoved out the door a little bit, and famously he is kind of down on it in his own estimation.
Okay,
although
I'm trying to put myself in.
Yeah, it becomes kind of one of his more popular books because it is a good way of like getting Thomas Pynchon in front of people and like undergraduate classes and whatnot, or even, high school classes, as we know some people who have read this in high school because it's short and sweet.
I'm trying to get myself in the head of someone who would have been reading The Crying of Lot 49 in the early 60s, and they would have been like, okay, this concert rings a bell.
Yeah.
I've heard of this before. Okay, good to know. Go ahead, Duri.
I found the passage in V where they speak of the lost or the Vivaldi kazoo concerto. Again, it's in this sort of like list of people at Flip and Flop's party. And it says, an unemployed musicologist named Petard, who had dedicated his life to finding the lost Vivaldi kazoo concerto, first brought to his attention by one Quasimodo, formerly a civil servant under Mussolini and now lying drunk under the piano, who had heard not only of its theft from a monastery by certain fascist music lovers, but also about 20 bars from the slow movement, which Petard would from time to time wander around the party blowing on a plastic kazoo.
Interesting. Okay.
Ooh.
So, but then here we have like a recording.
Yeah, it's a variorum recording, which, according to this definition here, is like an edition of something that has notes and commentary by a variety of like editors or historians or something. So presumably in the intervening decade since V, this guy found and published the Lost Concerto, and this is a scholarly piecing together of it, I guess.
Well, I'm really glad we got a follow up on Petard's journey, because I was left hanging at the end of V as to what happened to him and his search for the kazoo.
Yeah, some of the many strings that we talked about that weren't resolved are being resolved in the
in order of
works.
importance.
Yeah, indeed they are. So we're soon thrust into the inciting incident of this book, which is that Oedipa has got to deal with this will from Pearson Verarity that she knew nothing about, and she knows very little about his assets other than that he was a kind of wheeler and dealer across Southern California. And she thinks back to this moment where he called her up in the middle of the night and did a bunch of sort of stereotypical voice caricatures at her, including one of Lamont Cranston, the Shadow, and like a weird Nazi Gestapo voice that later reminds her of her psychotherapist. And this is our introduction to Pearson Verarity.
And what is the Shadow?
The Shadow is who was it that Benny scrawled on the Susanna Squaducci? It wasn't the Shadow. Oh, it was the Phantom. So the Shadow is kind of like the Phantom in that they're these pre-superhero masked crime fighters. So kind of like Batman before Batman, where they wear masks and they do crime, but they use guns more often than like your comic book cape superheroes. And I think the shadow and the reason this voice comes up is because probably like the Phantom, it was also like a popular like radio drama type thing. So you would tune in to hear about the exploits of the Shadow.
Gotcha.
And I guess he had a distinctive voice.
Naming a random person as executor of your will, a very fun prank to do. Just like really inconvenience someone on the way out. I might do it.
Especially like a complicated will. Like this man seems like he had very complex finances and holdings and like litigation going on. And yeah, just a really unfortunate thing that happened to dear Oedipa.
Yeah, so Oedipa was named the executor in a codicil from a year prior to this happening. So it is interesting. She doesn't know, presumably Pearson Verity, she doesn't know exactly when he died. Is that right? Because it takes them a while to find the will.
Yeah, they don't know. She doesn't know when he died or how. And she like speculates at one point that this whitewashed bust of a railroad magnate, Jay Gould, that he kept above his bed, like crushed him in the night. But that was not actually the way he died, I don't think.
Yeah, but
This is a real fear of mine, is having something hung above the bed fall onto me. I will never hang anything above the bed. And this
get Flat Stanley. That's what happened to Flat Stanley.
Is that what happened to Flat Stanley?
That's what happened. A big like poster board like fell on him, and he got. Well, he was at first he was Stanley, and then he was Flat Stanley, and that freaked me out as a kid.
Let that be a cautionary tale.
Where this comes from, this fear.
I have always been afraid of ceiling fans, like that are spinning above the bed, like getting loose from the ceiling from all of the like momentum and crashing down.
You should do what every home I've ever lived in does, which is have a ceiling fan that is so old and decrepit that it simply can't spin fast enough to come unwound.
So as she's remembering this call, of course, Oedipa's in bed with her husband, Mucho Mas, get it? Who is currently working as a radio disc jockey, but before that was at a sort of used car lot. And this is, I think, one of the first instances where we get these long form meditations on what the hell is going on and the philosophical or moral question of extremely mundane things like trading in a used car.
Yeah, this passage about the used cars reminded me of our good friend Benny Profane and like his relationship to inanimacy.
We get a lot. I mean, I guess starting here, we get a lot of allusions to the body being like mechanical and society being electronic. But this actual passage is crazy that, again, in a book that is this short, we spend 4 pages talking about how Mucho is scared of stuff because he worked at a car sales place. Like, it feels like my understanding, this might be apocryphal, my understanding is one of the reasons that Moby Dick is so long is because he was being paid by the word to publish this novel. And this passage is, I think, an example of feeling like the publisher needs this book and it can't be like 75 pages. We have to really bump it up. And there's like 3, it's crazy, guys. There's so many pages.
I thought there was some like really good stuff in this passage, though.
It's great. Yeah, he thinks about like the dust that like just sits there that like sloughs off of people, and then other people get in there and they're just like in other people's dust.
He said he describes the cars or the trade-in cars as motorized mechanical extensions of themselves, meaning the people that come in, of their families and what their whole lives must be like, and then like describes sort of like the trash that's found in the cars. That kind of reminded me a little bit of like, I don't know, this again might be apocryphal, but that's not the right use of that word on my part. It reminded me, we can cut that bit. It reminded me of...
Quit making it funnier.
It reminded me of the Grapes of Wrath a little bit. and the like
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're
like
totally right.
jalopy car that's sort of the extension and embodiment of this family that's traveling within it. And he kind of examines what the contents of these cars sort of say about the families. And like, what was this little bit? He said, okay, I'm trying to pick up like where in the middle of the sentence to start reading this short passage. Like he lists all these things that had been lost in the car. And then he said, all the bits and pieces coated uniformly like a salad of despair in a gray dressing of ash, condensed exhaust, dust, body wastes. I really liked the phrase salad of despair.
Yeah, just after that, I underlined the phrase, it made him sick to look, but he had to look, which I think describes a little bit what Oedipa gets herself into, where she just keeps looking into things, even though it doesn't necessarily make sense to, and she gets into some weird scrapes. But this idea of like having to keep looking at the thing, I think recurs a little bit in this book.
Yeah, and he just basically like he's sort of traumatized by this experience working at the used car lot. They like actually compare it to like folks who went to war and came back with like PTSD, but he has PTSD from his experience at the used car lot, and like wakes up in the night and like keeps having like flashbacks to this experience he had.
Yeah, Mucho also has a like real, like there's a like social status and like racialized quality to what he's thinking through here as well, because he talks about people poorer than him who are coming in, who have the, quote, most god-awful trade-ins, and he, like, racializes those people who are poorer than him. And he also works very hard. It's, like, not exactly said explicitly, but he, like, shaves his upper lip every 3 times every morning. He, like, doesn't slick his hair back at all with anything but water, because he doesn't, I guess, want to look sort of, like, greasy in a like stereotypical way. He combs it like Jack Lemmon, who is a very like waspy sort of looking actor. Anyways, I think like he tries to present himself as like an all-American guy in a certain way, which is related, I think, to his anxiety over working at the used car lot. Unless maybe I'm reading more into that than is necessary.
No, I think you're probably onto something with
so
that.
too.
He's not having a lot better time at his current job as a DJ, where he's perpetually fighting with his boss. And on the day in question, he's been told that he's too horny for the radio, and that his like phone call clips have to be pre-edited.
As you were saying, Andrew, Mucho has had a bad day at work. Oedipa shows him a letter from Metzger, who is Pearson Vererity's lawyer, and Mucho suggests going over to their lawyer, Roseman. But also in the middle of the night, Dr. Hilarious calls Oedipa to ask if she wants to take part in this weird little study that he's putting together. Because it's the 1960s, you see.
Yeah, and we have yet another sort of like weird psychoanalyst who seems sort of like predatory to the women that he's working with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I don't want to throw eigenvalue under the bus. He was not necessarily predatory, but this guy felt like sort of a combination of Schoenmacher and eigenvalue.
Pynchon is playing once again in the sort of like weird German doctor pool again.
Oedipa is getting all sorts of weird calls in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that happens to her.
Take the receiver off the phone off the receiver off the hook. I guess it's 2025. I don't use a landline.
Phones work.
I'm trying to remember as a child what I did when I didn't want a phone call.
Unplug the phone. Yeah.
Unplug the phone. Take
off
the
receiver
so
off the hook.
So, yeah, that's what. That's the expression we're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah, Dr. Hilarious wants to know if she's using her actual prescription, which supposedly just tranquilizers, but she's too scared because she knows that he perpetually is nagging her to be in this LSD / mescaline / psilocybin study.
Yeah, to build the bridge inward is the thing that he's trying to understand through these psychedelically influenced suburban housewives.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on how many women at the Tupperware party are participants in this study.
It's got to be quite a few.
I think there's at least a substantial percentage.
This is, I think, a very good joke. He says that they need a 104th for the bridge, which I've never played bridge, but it's a 4. You'd be like, we need a 4th to play bridge, and they're looking for a 104th person for the bridge experiment. Dr. Hilarious is funny because then he hits her with the "Didn't you call me?" and then hangs up.
Hilarious
Indeed. He also does like weird little faces during their sessions, including this one that he calls the Fu Manchu, which is sort of exactly what you might expect as far as racial caricatures faces to be. Then
we get a lot of
there's a lot of disguises.
There's a lot of face imagery, like we talk a lot about in that Rapunzel painting from your blurb at the top. We get a lot about faces there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some faces maybe in chapter 2 as well.
Yeah,
a lot of faces.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this theme of like disguises. Inverarity disguises his voice. Hilarious sort of makes these weird faces, each of which has a number and a name associated with them. And then Oedipa visits the lawyer Roseman, who is writing a manuscript about how much he dislikes Perry Mason. Speaking of television. And he also tries to petition Oedipa to running away with him, or at the very least having sex with him, which is another thing that keeps happening to Oedipa throughout these chapters.
Yeah, I feel like literally everyone she encounters is trying to sleep with Oedipa.
Yep.
Got to be a thing with the name Oedipa, right?
Yeah. Yeah, at which point we get this little musing on the Remedios Varo painting, which I'm going to post. I don't know if y'all looked this up, but it is a real painting.
Mm-hmm.
Posting it in the Discord for quick reference.
My first thought was, I was like, I had to look it up because I needed to know if it would be a good alternate cover for the book.
Because the cover for this book, once again, is less than exciting, in my opinion.
It's got the stamp, and we've got a lot of male stuff going on so far.
That's something.
It's true. I regret to inform you that
it's good.
I have a fucking dope cover for this book, which I believe is the first US paperback edition that has this absolutely groovy gal doing some dance moves on the front with a psychedelic patterned shirt and a mini skirt, and then a Ringo looking guy on a drum kit behind her.
It's very reminiscent of now we're just talking about book covers, but it's very reminiscent of the fun alternate cover that none of us have of V, with all the people like making out in the apartment.
Oh yeah,
the house party in the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a good set if you're like a book set collector. If you're one of those people, look for these copies.
The art on this cover, which I'll put a link to in the show notes once again, did help me understand that one point. Pynchon describes, I think maybe at like one of the parties or something, someone is doing like a vertical backstroke, and I was like, what the hell does that mean? But I'm realizing it's like this sort of like stereotypical 1960s dance move, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be a vertical backstroke. And it was in large part due to the cover that I was like, I see what is being described.
Because this is an auditory and not a visual medium, I just want the listeners to know that we all just like had a little dance moment.
Doing a vertical backstroke.
Yes.
I will say, Patrick, can you hold up the cover one more time?
Absolutely.
This is not great audio content. She looks more like she's doing the like Carlton Banks.
No,
like,
yes, it is far more. It's not unusual.
Yeah, everyone, the listeners know what I'm talking about.
Everybody knows what the Carlton's all about. No, she does look much more like she's doing that, but it gave me the clue that I needed to intuit what was going on. How would we describe this Remedios Varo painting ourselves?
There's a tower.
Let me pull it back
There's a
up.
tower. There's women in the tower.
They're writing things?
Yeah,
they're like
copying a manuscript or I guess they're weaving because those are the looms.
Okay, and then the
like
fabric
weaving,
is spilling out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like out of like a pasta, almost like it looks like fresh pasta being like pushed out of a pasta press. I read this whole section, looked up the painting, had to go back and read the section because it does not mention the scary guy in the middle who's got abs and is wearing a face mask. He is not mentioned.
Are you saying that this book does not communicate sort of like an important personage that is lying in the shadows of the world? That the communication is not complete and entire?
And this like
I am saying that.
Sinister figure like is stirring sort of a pot?
Yeah, he's got
that
like
have like
wizard or witch over the bubbling cauldron vibe.
And then there are like little threads coming out of the bubbling cauldron that look like they're sort of attached to maybe the needles that the ladies are using.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like a Palpatine-esque royal guard in the background.
Yeah, or a Palpatine-esque like figure behind the figure almost, you know.
Ooh.
Like it's a little bit like a Darth Vader and Palpatine situation. You got the guy in the mask up front, the big figure, and then you got the little shadowy figure even further in the background.
Yeah. And then I guess this like tapestry that they're making is sort of spilling out into the world, but looks like it's like actually forming the ground of the world.
Yeah, it's
the ground
either
in the sea,
engulfing things, or things are sort of like sprouting out of it, like buildings and ships and seas, etc.
And there's these 6 women in the tower look pretty identical.
Yeah.
In terms of both like clothing and like their face and hair.
Yeah, they're all sort of dressed like Madeline from the 2x2 book.
Which reminds Oedipa of a Rapunzel kind of narrative. She's imagining being trapped in this tower and then considers leaving this tower, but then realizing that wherever she goes, she's still standing on the tapestry that emerges from the tower. So it's like you're never leaving the tower. That there would be no escape, as she puts it. What do we think? Where's this coming from? I kind of forgot that this part of the book happened at the end of the first chapter. I was like, oh yeah, eventually we get to this kind of like painting thing. Does seem sort of like a bold choice to jump straight into this as a defining image to carry into the rest of the book, maybe?
The first part, I was like, oh yeah, this is a Thomas Pynchon book. Because up until, there's a lot of like goofy stuff that happens that's very Thomas Pynchon, but this is the first part that I was like, oh yeah, I've read some stuff like this.
We're in it, yeah. I agree.
I might be going out on a limb a little here, but I feel like this idea of sort of like existing on this like tapestry that's being woven by these people and you can't like escape from the tapestry, like I feel like it connects to this sort of like Stencil-esque quest, like trying to figure out who's weaving the world out of this tapestry, who's behind all of this, and like sort of pulling at threads, so to speak, to try to get back to sort of like who is the kind of like central mastermind behind this operation. But you kind of just end up sort of like engulfed by the tapestry itself, or like the threads lead you down different paths that are not necessarily leading you to some greater truth.
Yeah, I think it's also definitely got Benny Profane, Calvinist vibes of if there's sort of someone out there creating this tapestry that is the world, then, you know, your place in it is predetermined and your sort of role is set.
Yeah, it also feels, I don't know if my argument here is that the painting seems kind of inspired by this, or I actually don't know when this was painted, or if Pynchon's interpretation of it seems kind of inspired by it, but I can't help but think of the Jorge Luis Borges story on exactitude in science, which seems like it was published in 1946 originally.
The painting was from 1961, just for context.
Okay, so like this is hot new work from Remedios Varo.
Shortly before he died, I think.
Or she, right? Is Remedios Varo a woman? Yeah, Remedios Varo is a woman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The only Remedios I know is in 100 Years of Solitude, and she was a woman. So, checks out.
Yeah, Maria de los Remedios Alicia Rodriga Varo y Uranga.
From Girona.
There you go.
Just north of Barcelona.
Died 1963. Shout out to Remedios Varo. Also on display at least one painting is on display at Chicago Art Institute.
Wow.
That we saw. What was I say? Oh, Borges. Yes. So there's this like kind of often anthologized Borges story on exactitude in science, which is this little fable parable type thing about this king who wants to map his territory and keeps requesting bigger and even more exact maps until his entire kingdom or like the entire world is covered by the map, and the map is an exact 1-to-1 recreation of the territory. And so there becomes no distinction between the thing and the representation of the thing. And in kind of typical Borgesian ways, this is a kind of thought experiment about the relationship between symbols and objects in the world around us. And this feels very much of a piece of like this tapestry that covers the entire world and then becomes the entire world, even though it is a representation of a thing that maybe doesn't even exist underneath it. Feels like it might be something Pynchon is pulling on.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a good story. Shout out to Borges. Shall we go to chapter 2?
Let's do it. 12-page Pynchon chapters rule. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there.
I think Gravity's Rainbow is divided into like big sections with like smaller subdivisions. So we may get some shorter things going forward. Anyways, in chapter 2, Oedipa drives to San Narciso, locus of Inverarity's wheelings and dealings, including the Galactronics division of Yoyodyne. Yes, that Yoyodyne. She checks into a grimy motel whose front desk is manned by Miles, a mop-topped member of mock British invasion rock band, the Paranoids. Inverarity's lawyer, Metzger, shows up at her door with some booze, and the two spend the evening canoodling in bed while watching a war movie Metzger starred in way back in his child actor days. During a drunken game of strip Botticelli, Oedipa clothes herself in her entire suitcase, accidentally trashes the hotel room with a punctured aerosol can, and spends most of the evening dozing off as Metzger undresses her. She wakes mid-coitus just before the raucous Paranoids concert by the pool trips the breaker.
Yeah, and I should be noted that neither of these cities are real places in California. So she's from Kinneret and travels to San Narciso. Kinneret, I read, was is actually the Hebrew name of the Sea of Galilee, which is the largest freshwater lake in Israel. And there are places that are called San Narciso, but they are in the Philippines. Just as a sidebar.
San Narciso feels like it is probably a like Narcissus reference, or at least is often taken to be a reference to Narcissus. So the myth of the kid who is obsessed with his own reflection in the water and then falls in, and opposite Narcissus in like the Metamorphoses or in the myth broadly is the nymph Echo, who is cursed by the gods to only repeat what others say to her. And sure enough, the motel that Oedipa ends up at is called, was it Echo Courts?
Yeah. Echo Courts.
And there is a big, sexy nymph with like blowing, like fan blown clothes revealing her nudity underneath outside of the motel advertising the spot. So it's a serious place for serious people.
There's also a Saint Narcissus, just as a sidebar. I think you're probably right with the reference, but
is Saint Narcissus? Yeah, Saint Narcissus. I don't know anything about Saint Narcissus. He comes up in this, either in this chapter or the next chapter. I don't know anything about the real Saint Narcissus.
I don't really either, but I just thought I'd throw that out there as like maybe a double reference. We know Thomas Pynchon likes saints.
That's true.
I just want to throw this out there before we pass it. The music she's listening to on the way out of town is by a band called Sick Dick in the Volkswagens, which is a fun little VD joke. I chuckled personally.
Do you think that's put out by Outlandish Records?
It's
Highly
gotta
possible.
be, right?
Who like do Volkswagens in hi-fi?
Yeah.
Was Volkswagens in hi-fi actually a band the whole time, not just car recordings?
Wow.
I didn't think about that as a V reference until now, but maybe.
It's also got, the requisite Germany tie-in.
For sure. I really like this description of San Narciso as less an identifiable city than a grouping of concepts. And there's a really kind of beautiful section where Oedipa is looking down at the city and thinks about the ordered swirl of houses and streets from this high angle, spraying at her now with the same unexpected, astonishing clarity as the circuit card had. And she imagines like the city resembling this kind of printed circuit. And you are totally right, Andrew. We are sort of like back in people and society being kind of like electronics territory.
It also reminds me of the painting as well. Like they're kind of looking down from this tower at this like organization of a city on a tapestry.
Mm-hmm. Which is like kind of the thing that starts to define the United States in the post-war economy, is this kind of like planned suburbanization. And I think that is definitely something that is a major through line in this book.
Yeah, I felt that as well. And that there was this picture being painted of like sort of like endless suburbia. Where did I make note of that?
I just realized none of V takes place in suburbia. Like we've not seen, I guess the closest thing we have in V to suburbia is when they're in like upstate New York, but they're still just in like, it's not suburbia. It's like a mountain town.
Yeah, they go
like
to up in the Catskills. Yeah.
It takes place like entirely in New York and like old world cities. So this will be interesting. I'm excited for Thomas Pynchon putting suburbia and Southern California on blast.
Yeah, I think we get there pretty quickly. So after Oedipa has some further musings on some other frequency or out of the eye of some whirlwind rotating too slow for her heated skin even to feel the centrifugal coolness of words were being spoken. Again, we have this like Pentecostal kind of imagery of wind and words whipping through the air and giving speech to things. I think even the word Pentecost comes up at least once in the couple of chapters that we're reading. So still on that theme. But the big V connection here is that Yoyodyne is back. And they're a big employer in San Narciso.
And Pierce is a big investor in Yoyodyne and even got them the tax breaks that they needed to set up shop.
Yeah, so it seems like Yoyodyne in the interim period between V and the Crying of Lot 49 has moved to California for the tax break.
Well, I think there's a lot of subdivisions of Yoyodyne probably. There's probably still the Long Island they're in Long Island, right?
Yeah.
I think in V. There's got to be. These big corporations have their plants and their production facilities all over the place.
This is specifically the Galactronics division which seems to be a kind of nonsense word of Pynchon's invention.
And they make ICBMs based on the enormous missiles that are outside.
Yeah, I wonder when Thomas Pynchon is going to write that big book about missiles that he keeps hinting at in these in these early works.
I bet it comes out someday.
Seems like he has a lot to say about them.
Also on this sort of same page where we see Yo-Yo dying again, I thought it was really interesting. Oedipa sort of describes like the road that she's driving down and like resolves that she wants to stop at a hotel because it would be preferable to this illusion of speed, freedom, wind in your hair, unreeling landscape. It wasn't. What the road really was, she fancied, was this hypodermic needle inserted somewhere ahead into the vein of a freeway, a vein nourishing the mainliner LA, keeping it happy, coherent, protected from pain, or whatever passes with a city for pain. And I thought that was really interesting because we've talked about like the idea of like the street in V, and I felt like this was a different characterization of like a road or a street as kind of like as a hypodermic needle that's like nourishing the city. The street going out into the suburbs is sort of providing a drip line to the city, I guess.
It's not a nourishment. So you sort of skipped this next sentence where where Oedipa describes herself as heroin being injected through the needle. So I guess the opposite of nourishment is sort of
I guess like a
depressant.
A
depressant.
Yeah.
It slows down the main line, but is also like it's an addiction. There's an addiction to these like subdevelopments and planned suburbs and large manufacturers that the state is trying to bring in.
Yeah, and I found the part where I was on the same page where I had written in the margin deep suburbs, because she describes the address numbers as like getting up into the 70 and 80,000s. So it's like sort of this almost comical view or absurd view of like there's so many different, I don't know, like houses. The sprawl, I feel like, is highlighted in the high address numbers.
The street just sort of goes on forever if you're up in the 80,000s.
Well, we kind of started
your address.
We started this podcast asking whether Interstate 95 had been officially a thing yet when Benny Profane was going up and down the East Coast, and I feel like this so far is kind of a novel that has a lot more to do with like the relationship between the American sprawl and the highways and the interstate system. Like these places are far apart in a way that V was not really concerned with. Like everything in V within a chapter was within like a subway trip from one place to another, or a bus trip. And here, like Oedipa's driving for a while to not even get to LA, but to get to this, suburb that might eventually lead one to LA.
Yeah. And I think this is like Benny Profane was traveling along sort of a similar road, probably, like you were saying, like on the East Coast, but we never actually see that.
And along the way, she stops at this Echo Courts motel and meets Miles, maybe 16, with a Beatle haircut and a lapel-less, cuffless, one-button mohair suit. Is this
Miles is the best?
Is Miles the best?
He seems like he's fun. He's fun. He's a high school dropout. He's really trying to capitalize on the British invasion. What else is there to say?
He's
about
not
him?
British.
He is not British. He watches television like movies and television to fake his accent. And when Oedipa tells him,
their manager tells them to, because like the Brits are cool.
They need a shtick.
Yeah.
But when Oedipa says that her husband is a DJ, he assumes that for her to pass along his cassette that he's going to have to sleep with her, that he thinks that she's trying sort of to coerce him into having sex. And he's just like, yeah, I'm hot and young. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, Paola comes up a lot here. Do we y'all know what Paola is?
I looked at Paola.
Yeah, I looked it
Paola
up.
is bribery specifically bribery to use someone else's clout, I think is how the kids would say.
Yeah, and
Clout wasn't in
specifically
the Merriam dictionary definition.
it was like a legal battle in like what, the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Yeah, in the 50s about like paying radio stations to play particular songs, which you can't do anymore, at least on the radio. Now, the thing is that in this new streaming economy, we don't have any rules about that anymore. You can do whatever you want. Paola's back, baby. Always prescient, Thomas Pynchon. Yeah, we get our first song here.
Miles' song.
Jeez, the songs are back.
Miles' song.
There's so many songs, guys. I'm tired of the songs.
You know, you were asking if this was going to be a sort of Lord of the Rings situation where songs just keep coming up.
Songs keep coming up. What are they going to... I can't imagine there's songs in Gravity's Rainbow. What are the songs? I don't want to know. They're going to be songs, and I'm not going to be happy about it.
There's songs. There's songs, Andrew. There's songs all over. I like that these songs have titles. Like, we get Miles songs, and then soon enough, what do we get? We get Baby Igor's song and Serenade. I think it's very funny to put titles for the songs.
Yeah.
So the thing that I've never been extremely clear on. So Metzger, the lawyer, just like shows up here. Like at the door, bottle in hand.
Bottle of wine.
But he's got a little bottle of tequila stashed away in his jacket for later too. Doesn't really seem like they have planned this meeting. Do you think she phones in and is like, I'm here at this hotel? What happens here?
It says he's been looking for her.
And it also says that she picks like a random... She's just like, I'm going to stop at whatever the next spot is.
Yeah.
I felt like at one point there was an implication that he had like traveled to like a couple of different hotels or motels looking for her. Did you guys also pick up on that?
How many hotels can there be in this like industrial park?
That's fair.
I definitely got the vibe that he was just going around being like, is there a Mrs. Moss here? And eventually he like gets a bite.
Yeah, he says, after scouring motels all day to find you, I can come in there, can't I? So yeah, I guess this is sort of a Rachel and Benny Profane situation where Rachel is calling every bus depot on the East Coast to try and see if they can page Benny Profane.
You know, life before cell phones.
And we get Metzger, who's a major character in these couple of chapters.
Yeah, so he was Pierce's lawyer and is the co-executor of the will.
One of his lawyers, because he initially is just like, I wrote the will, and then later he did taxes sometimes. He seems to be a lawyer of many trade, like does a lot of different types of law, but is also drops in and out of how important he was to Inverarity as it fits his... And
he's quite scrupulous about later on when like people are like stealing stuff or smoking pot, he kind of like closes his eyes and turns his head so that he can provide like legal services without being implicated in the criminal activity. And so he can like nominally protect his clients' interests should they need it. And so I feel like there's a certain implication that like he is not necessarily up to speed on everything that Pierce Inverarity got up to as far as the illegal sort of stuff. He's doing taxes. He's like keeping, making the books all follow the right law.
He feels like he's very much like one of those like fixer lawyers who you just kind of have on staff, and they do it, or they kind of do whatever you personally need.
Yeah, you don't need to tell them everything.
Taxes,
but
tomorrow you're doing Yeah.
What was that movie with George Clooney that we watched?
Oh, Michael Clayton.
Ocean's 11.
Michael Clayton.
Michael Clayton, yeah.
Tony Gilroy's Michael Clayton.
Yeah.
I was thinking sort of Tom from The Godfather. Sort of he's outside. He's not inside, but he's always outside. He's always outside the door, like where the decisions are made, so he can always be the lawyer.
Yeah, you could send him out of the room when certain topics are being discussed. I think, yeah, that's a good example. They're watching.
And like George Clooney, Metzger is apparently extremely attractive.
Yeah. I like the
and
word.
Tom from The Godfather.
There you go.
Enormous eyes, lambent. Lambent isn't an adjective you see very often. It's a good word for eyes, meaning like glowing.
Yeah, and we quickly find out he used to be a child actor.
Baby Igor.
Igor.
He was Baby Igor. The famous Baby Igor.
Of World War I movie fame.
I think this movie is so funny.
This seems like a fun movie. There's not a lot of good World War I movies out there.
All's Quiet on the Western Front. Excellent movie.
Okay, yes. But this is very much a World War I movie in the vein of World War II. You know what I mean? It's like sort
of like a family
All Quiet
narrative.
on the Western Front is not the same as what this is.
No, not in the slightest. Do either of you want to take a stab at the describing the plot of the movie in brief?
Yeah, so Baby Igor's dad is in the British Army, British military, British Army. I think he's in the British Army, it said.
Yeah, British Army. He was in the British Army.
He was in the British Army. And because he takes the fall for his friend, he gets dishonorably discharged.
Cashiered,
but the battle's
which is a
not
word
over.
I didn't know until this book, that it to be sort of like dishonorably discharged from an armed service is to be cashiered.
Yeah, same. I'm going to use it. Anyway, he decides to build his own personal miniature submarine so that he can personally take the battle to the Turks in the Mediterranean with his child and his dog on board. And that is sort of the gist of the movie. It is a Das Boot with a baby. I don't know what happens in Das Boot. I've never seen it.
It's not dissimilar to what happens in this film. It's pretty similar, actually. Yeah, Baby Igor sings a song that includes the chorus, "My daddy, my doggy, and me. Once more under the breach for those boys on the beach, just my daddy, my doggy, and me."
And Oedipa and Metzger have a debate about whether this story is going to end positively for everyone, like a happy ending, or not so much. And it seems like the type of story that would end with a happy ending. But Oedipa sort of reluctantly goes in on a bet that it's going to end horribly for all of them.
Yeah, they've started drinking the Beaujolais wine. We're sort of well into them sort of like lounging on the bed watching this movie.
At one point they describe, I guess, as they go out to sea for maybe the final time, that they're on the dock is like a hot nurse, a cute little girl, and even like a beautiful dog. So that they can all have their happy ending when they come to shore.
Yeah, and the word they use
if they come to shore.
The word they use for the cute little girl here is nymphet, which is a word that, as far as I know, mainly appears in Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. Shout out
I didn't
to
love that.
Shout out to Pynchon's presumable teacher at Cornell University.
Did you think that's where that comes from? Do you think?
I can't think of a single reason why you would use the word nymphet if it wasn't a Lolita reference.
Do you think it was like a shout out? He's like, shout out to Prof, or do you think it was Nabokov just uses it in language so often that he picked it up? Do you think everything was a nymphet to Nabokov? Because that theme does come up a lot.
Yeah, so it seems that Nymphet, like its popularization by and large is from Lolita. Prior to that, there's a couple entries in terms of like nymphs in like the insectoid sense, but also in the like Greek mythological sense that like Nymphet had been applied to. But yeah, seems like Nabokov is credited for this particular sort of like sexualized young woman usage of the term.
Well, and as you said, Patrick, they're staying in a hotel whose like billboard advertisement is
sexy nymph.
A sexy nymph.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Vladimir.
Thanks, Vlad. It's a good book. When we get to our Vladimir Nabokov unit, starting with Mary and going from there. The TV station starts showing the movie out of order, which is confusing to both of the parties watching it.
There's so many commercial breaks. We got to talk. We got to fit that in there. They cut to commercial. This is Turner Classic Movies. They're cutting to commercial so goddamn much.
It's like TV. It's just, this is a novel about TV in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I thought it was wild. Like, I was trying to, anyways, imagine a TV show where they get the reels mixed up and they play it out of order, which is not something we experience currently. But yeah, it was kind of comical to try to like put together what was going on in the story, like, and whether it had a happy or sad ending based on the sort of plot playing out of order.
Yeah, at one point it like flashes back to, or like they see the father of baby Igor's character like on the front lines, and they're like, is this a flashback or is this like out of order? Like, what's happening here?
And meanwhile, there's like a whole slapstick comedy going on in the hotel room between Oedipa and Metzger, in which like Metzger talked Oedipa into playing this sort of like striptease game where she could ask questions about the plot of the movie and he would like tell her answers, but like one answer for like each piece of like clothing that she took off. And then she decided to pull off this like little joke where she goes into the bathroom and she puts on every piece of clothing and like jewelry that she has in her suitcase. And so she's kind of described as just being like shapeless and round because she has on like 4 bras and like 8 jackets and like a bunch of bracelets. And like, so she just looks ridiculous. And then she falls over, knocks the can of hairspray off the counter as she falls, and the hairspray goes like haywire and is like shooting around the room and like hitting things and breaking things.
Yeah, once again, we're in sort of like Looney Tunes territory.
Yeah,
where it's
like very comical.
Bang, bang.
Yeah, they like, it shatters a mirror. Metzger has to like hit the deck. Like he like tries to come into the bathroom to find out what's happening and has to take a dive. And then I think it ends by flying out the door, which Miles and the band have just opened, and it just like zips right past their head.
Yeah, and in this moment, for some reason, Oedipa decides to pull a little bit of a ploy move and like sinks her teeth into Metzger's shoulder. And that's when like Miles and his crew walk in and they're like, kinky.
Yeah, the Paranoids are all perverts. We didn't mention that.
How cool are they now, Andrew?
Tom.
Miles is passing around the room keys so people can get a look-see and all the people coming to the hotel for their illicit deeds. And they're underage.
Oedipa's only 28. I didn't realize that.
I meant the Paranoids. No, yeah.
I know. I
was going to say, I was like, yeah.
As we're talking about people's ages, that came up around this point, was her age.
Yeah, Metzger's 35, I think it says in a later chapter, which means that if he was like, I don't know, if this book is in like 1964, let's say, minus 35, so he was born in 1929, so this movie was like filmed in the 1930s, would have been the timeline for this, sometime in the mid 1930s.
Yeah. Well, at first I was like, oh, this is like a World War II thing. And I was like, wait, he couldn't have been baby. I was like, they were making World War II films in the 50s and 60s. He wasn't a baby 5 years ago. And then I looked up E-class submarines, and they were discontinued in 1922. Yeah, crazy stuff.
Yeah, so they keep.
Okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
About the strip Botticelli.
Mm-hmm.
One, strip Botticelli, like the artist, like The Birth of Venus V. Second,
Sure. Yeah.
At one point, she takes off her earrings. And I just want to, if you guys were playing like strip poker, jewelry doesn't count. If I was only wearing earrings, you wouldn't say I was clothed. I take umbrage at her use of jewelry as a article of clothing.
I've never played strip anything.
Loser.
I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I've never been offered the chance to. Maybe
we're getting
maybe next time Pynchon Pals gets together, there's no telling what'd you say, Andrew?
We're getting together in 2 weeks for your birthday.
That's true. We could make something happen. But I do feel like I've seen it enough in like movies or sitcoms or whatever that like taking off the earrings is like you're
gotcha.
Like going by the letter of the law, but not.
It is a real get you, but I was into it when Oedipa put on like 200 articles of clothing. That's a fun bit. If I was Metzger, I would have been like, "Oh, you got me there. That's a fucking good one." And then when she took off earrings, I'd be like, "Whoa! This is not how you play this game."
But anyways, she she's asking a lot of questions, and she just keeps taking off jewelry, but it's taking so long that he kind of like falls asleep. And then she feels the need to wake him up because she did actually, I guess, want to sleep with him despite this whole like ruse that she played with the clothing. And so he ends up undressing her, and it says it took him 20 minutes rolling, arranging her this way and that, as if she thought he were some scaled up, short-haired, poker-faced little girl with a Barbie doll, which was a very sort of comical image, but also I think like brings us back to this visual of inanimacy, and like she's sort of turned into like a Barbie doll.
Yeah, she's like toyed around with. I didn't realize that Botticelli is just a name for this kind of game.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
There's a Wikipedia page. There's a Wikipedia page for Botticelli that I came across it's just
no
like
way.
a guessing game where you try to think of a famous person with yes or no questions.
Huh.
That is
it's like 20 questions.
Yeah, it's so called because the person has to be at least as famous as Sandro Botticelli.
Wow.
Yeah,
I feel like that reference carries.
Nice,
yeah, I've never heard it called this outside of this book.
What a non-firm, like ambiguous, hard to pin down parameter. How are you more or less famous than Botticelli?
Maybe Botticelli was more famous in the mid-century. I don't know.
Depends on what crew you're running with, I feel like.
Oh, if you're with the whole sick crew, Botticelli is very well known.
Who do we think is someone? I mean, I think there's a lot of mid-tier people who it's a real
Thomas Pynchon, at least as famous as Sandro Botticelli. Famous? Maybe not. Is Thomas Pynchon as famous as Botticelli?
Exactly. Taylor Swift, more famous than Botticelli. Thomas Pynchon's probably close to Botticelli.
If we went to a random person on the street and we're like, Birth of Venus, they'd be like, yeah, I like showed them the Birth of Venus. They'd be like, yeah, sure, I've seen that somewhere. But if you pulled out a copy of Gravity's Rainbow.
But I also feel like
saying Botticelli. I've seen lots of paintings that I don't know the artist, or like I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you the artist's name. And I know lots of artists' names that I wouldn't be able to like tell you the name of the painting.
Where does history come into the picture here? Because I feel like, obviously someone who's contemporary is going to be more like immediately well known. But like Botticelli has been more famous for much longer than like Taylor Swift.
But there's like way more people on Earth right now. Like more people, like, you know what I mean? Like if everyone on Earth today knows who Taylor Swift is, which they probably basically do, that's 8 billion people. And how many people, like Botticelli
like historically how many people have known who
Historically,
Botticelli is.
yeah, like wasn't doing the like even if everyone in Florence knows who Botticelli is, that's not that many people in
That's
like the
true.
1500s. I don't know if he's from Florence,
I
but
think
his
so.
painting was there in V.
So
like
many
this at some
V
point.
references. I'm trying so hard to like get out of V mode with this book, but it's not helping me. I feel like
Yeah,
it's a little,
write a new
sequel.
book, Thomas.
Yeah, we get there's a brief little presagement of some future conspiracy a few pages before that, where there's a Beaconsfield cigarettes advertisement that uses bone charcoal, and Oedipa asks, bones of what? We'll soon find out.
Every commercial that comes on, Metzger is like, yeah. Pierce like had a holding in that. Like, yeah. He owned that. Like, that's his housing development. Those are his cigarettes. And Oedipa is like, could you shut up? Anyways.
By the end of the night, Oedipa awakes, quote, at last to find herself getting laid. She'd come in on a sexual crescendo in progress. So they're sort of like both pretty drunk and variously conscious, or falling asleep at the very least. And eventually she's like, the sex is happening, which is fairly creepy on Metzger's part.
But also she kind of seemed to wake up Metzger to have sex. I don't know. The whole thing feels a little ambiguous.
Yeah.
But not great that they're having sex while they're mutually falling asleep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
this
both
is
messed up.
I don't want to speculate on the ethics of this sexual encounter.
Suffice it to say, they are eventually both woken up by the paranoids outside, where like they just keep adding more guitars to the concert. Like at some point there's like 6 different people on lead guitar, which is super funny.
They're jamming. Them and their friends came to the Echo Courts Hotel, and they're having their nightly jam by the pool.
And then they blow a fuse, which I thought was funny because a fuse blew in our house last night. And not at all these same circumstances, but.
And you were waiting until the night before to read the chapters?
I read the chapters this morning. Fresh off the press. It's the first week back to school. It's a busy time.
Yeah, there you go. Good excuse. I want to focus in real quickly before we move on the like extremely violent deaths of baby Igor and the dog.
Spoiler, the movie ended
baby
tragically.
Yeah, R.I.P. baby Igor. The dog was the first to drown in a great crowd of bubbles. Camera came in for a close-up, baby Igor crying, one hand on the control board. Something short-circuited, and then baby Igor gets like violently electrocuted. Just like I feel there's something very like pre-Hays Code Hollywood about this movie. That's this is before you get your saccharine sweet war movies ending in sort of like rousing patriotism. It's just like, yeah, it breaks baby Igor's father, who does make it out of the submarine, and then the movie ends, quote, with that strange 30s movie music with the massive sax section.
I don't think he made it out.
Does he not make it out? I thought he like makes it up at some point.
Oh, maybe so. I misread like the sound of incoming water, but maybe that was just like a sound effect.
I guess, yeah, he doesn't quite die. It like fades out as he is dying. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I will say every movie that I have seen about World War I, which is just 2 movies, but they're both pretty bleak.
What's the second one?
1913?
1917?
1912?
Oh, yeah.
1917. Sorry.
The one where they're like, it's all in like one shot, kind of. Yeah.
That was actually the first movie Patrick and I saw together.
Adorable.
You know, a really cheery date night.
Yeah, I don't know if
Early
it's the best date night
relationship.
movie ever, but, you know.
Just a little trivia for the listener about about our dating.
Sorry, was that too personal to share on the pod?
I'll be the judge of that in the edit.
Anyways, yeah, bleak media about World War I.
World War I, pretty bleak.
Yeah, I mean, World War II is bleak too, but I guess there was a more patriotic ending for a certain part of the Western world.
And that's the end of this chapter. Shall we take a break before launching into the discussion of the third chapter?
Yes, I would like a snack.
All right.
I feel like I'm the only person that gets hungry on this podcast.
No, I bet we make our listeners hungry too. Listener, you go get yourself a snack. We'll be right back here enjoying our own snacks when we return right after this.
Yeah, let's get into the work.
Welcome back to Pynchon.
3, people.
Jesus Christ. I'm leaving it in.
Chapter.
Welcome back to Pynchon Pals. It's time for chapter 3. Here's the summary. We don't have chapter titles in this one, which makes me sad. But here's chapter 3, I guess. Oedipa figures...
It would have been half the words of this book if they'd given chapter titles to all the chapters.
There are song titles to make up for it.
Yeah, there you go. What happens here? Oedipa figures Mucho is probably wooing a teenager at a sock hop, so she and Metzger go boots on the ground to untangle Inverarity's assets. They land in the Scope, a watering hole frequented by Yoyodyne engineers, where Mike Fallopian, a member of the ultra-right-wing Peter Pingwood Society, introduces them to their underground mail service. Scrawled on the wall of the Scope's bathroom, Oedipa spots a solicitation for something called waste, alongside a strange symbol. Later, Oedipa, Metzger, the Paranoids, and their groupies steal a boat to visit Inverarity's Fangoso Lagoons development, where Metzger's colleague Manny Depresso lets them in on a mob conspiracy involving cigarette filters made from the bones of American GIs exported from Italy. Someone in the group thinks this sounds a lot like a play she just saw, so Oedipa and Metzger attend a performance of the Jacobean revenge drama The Courier's Tragedy. From a tortuous and torturous plot, thank you very much, involving the rival states of Squamulia and Faggio, Oedipa extracts some historical context surrounding the Turn and Taxis postal monopoly and a shadowy group called Tristero, which figures prominently, albeit mysteriously, in the play's violence.
There's a lot going on in this chapter.
There is a lot going on in this chapter, and I feel like we've had 3 chapters now.
1, 2, 3.
Each of these 3 chapters, there's been like an at-length engagement with a different media object.
Mm-hmm.
We had like the painting that we dug into. There was this movie that we like got the whole plot of, albeit in the wrong order. And then now we have this like very lengthy description of the plot of a play.
Oh, see, so I thought you were going to say that the media object in chapter 1 was the telephone and the media object in chapter 2 was the television.
Oh, the telephone is a media object?
Yeah, because Oedipa gets 2 late-night calls, or she remembers getting a late-night call and then gets a different late-night call.
I was thinking more like
we don't get the same kind of like... Hey, I'm on Duri's side. We don't get the same kind of like in-depth description of like a artistic piece using the
it's
medium.
like
Dr. Hilarious is just calling.
Just using the telephone.
Because he's a creep.
Right.
Yeah, maybe object was the wrong word, but like a media.
No, I think object was the right word, and I was thinking of a medium.
Mm.
Anyways, a lot happens in this chapter.
The thing that you use to find ghosts? I'm sorry, that was...
Anyways, I feel like this book is, let's use it again, for such a slim volume, is spending a lot of space on sort of like unpacking plots of different stories. And I wonder if that's like, this book doesn't have like a framing device in the same way that V did, where, we were cutting between these 2 different worlds and times. But we are kind of cutting back and forth between these like engagement with art of different forms.
Well, there's that. And then there's another thing that happens with the narration at least twice in this chapter that I can remember off the top of my head. It happens during the description of Peter Pingwood, this like Confederate general, and it happens during the description of the lost platoon of American GIs at the lake in Italy. And in both instances, there's like a guy telling a story, and there's like a little bit of dialogue in there, and then the narrator breaks in and just explains the story. Like the actual account of the conspiracy, as it were, is left to the narrator, which makes it like it removes some of the fluff, I guess. You don't have to have like, well, then there he was, as you know, like it trims all that dialogue so that you're just left with like, here's a narrator explaining to you the situation that someone else is explaining to the characters, which is interesting, but I think also shortens the work a little bit. I mean, arguably the Courier's tragedy is done in the same way.
You get Oedipa in a lot of those instances, like asking a question, and then that is like quoted. It is a question that is spoken out loud, and then the narrator comes in, as you said. It's sort of like the sort of Greek Greek like dialogue-esque, I feel like, where you've got the like question that is used as a device to go into the next point that is about to be made.
Oh yeah, like a Socratic dialogue of Plato.
Yes, exactly.
Kind of thing. Yeah. I could see that. But where do we start?
There's also a Greek tragedy.
We started another cool bar.
Well, actually, before we get there, we have that.
And we get the stamps. We got to talk about the stamps on the cover.
Stamps. Yeah, sorry. Critical plot point.
We get the Tristero system, or the Tristero, is this like thing that we know Oedipa will eventually be thinking a lot about.
I love it when a book tells you at the top, like, this is what to look out for, and then you forget about it, and then later you're like, oh, what is this thing? And then the next time you go back, you're like, they told me at the beginning. This gets me every time.
Yep.
It's my favorite things books do.
Being written in an order.
Yeah. It's the PowerPoint thing where they tell you what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Yeah.
Genius advice.
Thomas Pynchon took it. Oh yeah, this is where the vertical backstroke comes up at the sort of high school gym that Mucho is skulking around to pick up girls.
Yeah, so just to sum up for our readers, Oedipa was left Pierce's stamp collection, and it's hinted that she is going to have some revelation yet to come about this stamp collection and the Tristero.
Yeah, the U.S. mail, really. Thoughts on mail? Thoughts on postage?
Yeah,
comes up a
private
lot in this
versus
chapter.
public postal services.
I'm not sure what to make of it yet. I can't imagine there's suddenly less mail in the rest of the book, so surely we'll get it fleshed out a little bit more, but a lot of people have a lot of thoughts on the mail.
I feel like there's a lot going on in this book.
Which is also very prescient from Thomas Pynchon.
I feel like there's a lot going on in this book with like communication. Like the mail is a form of communicating with each other. Like what types of things are we communicating through the mail? We've got like these sort of like telephone conversations. And I feel like Oedipa
The radio,
the TV. And now we're like, Oedipa also keeps talking about like hieroglyphs, which I think we'll get to in a minute. But she mentions them throughout the earlier chapters as well. And this idea that like there are symbols that are meant to communicate something.
but that also, if you don't know what they're supposed to mean, you can tell that it's a symbol, but you don't know what the meaning behind the symbol is, and that produces a certain kind of anxiety.
Well, and I think
guess
Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I was going to say, I guess the 1960s is sort of similar to like the 2010s in that like suddenly there's new communication medium that are taking hold quickly across the country. Like we had the, radio in the 30s, mail for 1,000 years before that. And like now television and telephones are becoming much more ubiquitous. I guess that would have been very top of mind to people.
Yeah, and it becomes like
I haven't thought of this until right now.
It becomes cohered as like a mass media form. Like there start being like, oh, this is like a nightly news program. This is a sitcom.
Mhm.
This is a, hour-long police procedural. Like, all of these genres
like things are being,
start cohering.
things are being like unified in a way that things aren't when they're like much more bespoke.
Yeah, and not to jump ahead, but I thought it was really funny. I won't go into all this because we'll get to it in a minute, but there's a letter that's received later in this chapter that's like super brief. It's just like, hey, buddy, like, what's up? How's your book coming? Guess that's all for now. See you later. Which felt very funny as something to be sent in the mail. It felt more like something you would text someone or like call someone up and ask rather than like go to the effort to like put a postage stamp on and like send through the mail. We'll get to like why that is, but I thought that was a particularly interesting kind of comment on like how the sort of like medium of communication shapes what you say or how you say it.
Well, and that one's interesting because it's kind of the opposite of the symbol that you don't recognize but know it means something, which is that like you recognize all the symbols contained in there, but it actually says nothing. The content of that message is effectively nil. It is like the letter itself is the reason to send the letter. Yeah, I mentioned him on a previous episode, but like this is all very Marshall McLuhan sort of medium is the message. The content of the medium is less important than the way the medium is pushing your consciousness or your experience of the world. But to get to this bar, the scope.
Well, yeah, before we get to the scope, what was going on with Mucho and the young lady?
So Oedipus says that I guess it's now been a couple weeks that she's been down south, and her and Mucho are writing letters back and forth, and neither of them are writing anything of context, not of context, of importance, of I don't know what I was looking for there.
Consequence.
Yeah, thank you. And she kind of mentions that would she have mentioned that she's sleeping with Metzger, and and she decides, no, I'm not going to, because he probably assumes that I am, and that she knows that he's always sleeping with teenagers because he sleeps with teenagers. That just seems to be his thing.
Yep. There's as Oedipus thinks here, a Sharon, Linda, or a Michelle, 17, and what is known as a hip one.
Yeah, interesting marriage they have going on.
Yeah. I do think in this same thing, the narrator writes, she knew the pattern because it had happened a few times already, but I also think this kind of like pattern recognition thing is another defining characteristic of Oedipus, that she's just like, yeah, just seeing patterns and like where things appear several times. She like hears a word and then she's like, I keep hearing this word. She's like the ultimate version of that, what is that fallacy of like a recency bias where you like read a word for the first time and then you keep seeing that word. I feel like that's just her all over this book.
And then we get to the scope.
A scope, another cool Pynchon bar.
Mm-hmm.
Is it cool?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's cool. It has like an aesthetic. It has a vibe. Is it a place that I personally would hang out at? Perhaps not, but I think the people who do enjoy it.
I think the bar is really cool, and the like weird crypto Republicans seem extremely not cool. But the vibe is that it's named after like an oscilloscope or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's named after an oscilloscope. It's got like oscilloscope imagery above the top, and they only play electronic music and even have an electronic music like recording studio in the back.
Did we last see an oscilloscope with Mondagon?
Yes.
Was that his device?
Yeah, but his was on
he had
like paper.
Yeah, he had a paper, like drawing it on paper oscilloscope, like a earthquake, one of those like earthquake
seismograph type things.
This is like a 1960s updated version of what Mondagon was doing.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, I think oscilloscopes have basically been the same system, but it's got the little screen and it's like
a little screen and it has like a bunch of waves on it.
Yeah. Oscilloscopes are fun. Those are really fun to play with.
Electronic music is fun. Synthesizers are fun. They're onto something at the Scope here. Metzger at one point is like, what do you mean it's live electronic music? And they're like, well, I mean, obviously some of it is recorded to tape, but like we play it here live on the machines.
They would love a laptop orchestra.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they call it a sine wave session.
Sine wave session. Yeah, the Scope is cool. Shame about the clientele, including Mike Fallopian, who is...
what a name.
Yeah.
Mike Fallopian.
I saw one guy online suggest that the fallopian could be the fallopian tubes are sort of horseshoe shaped, and that Mike Fallopian's politics are so right wing that they wrap back around to being a kind of like anti-industrial capitalism.
I like that reading.
Yeah, I was kind of compelled by that. Shout out to whoever said that when I was Googling names. But he is a member of the Peter Penguid Society, which is, as Fallopian points out in the text, a sort of fictional rival to the real John Birch Society, which was like a right-wing, still is, like a right-wing political activist group mainly dedicated to kind of like anti-communist causes and named after a military officer, I think, who was like they attribute him as like the first American to die in the Cold War.
But he's not a real person.
John Birch?
No,
John
Peter Penguid.
Peter Penguid is not a real
Peter
person.
Penguid is made up. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But John Birch was a real person. The John Birch Society is real.
Gotcha.
And the way that Mike Fallopian says that, like, oh yeah, those of us who are a little further to the left in the John Birch Society, intending to mean that, like, this ultra-conservative movement, they are even more ultra-conservative than this real-world right-wing group.
So who Peter Penguid is, he was a Confederate commander of a man of war called the Disgruntled. I assume a fictional ship, but a very funny ship name for the Confederacy, either way. And he is sent by the Confederacy to go all the way around South America and attack San Francisco with a little fleet. And most of that fleet either is turned back or otherwise just like experiences too much hardship to continue, except for, I guess, the Disgruntled and Peter Penguid. And then when he gets to the west coast of the U.S., he comes into conflict with the Far East Fleet of the Russian Empire, which Nicholas has deployed to specifically ruffle the feathers of the British and the French, who are potentially helping the Confederacy. And even though all of the sort of ships involved just sort of sail around most of the time, there is one skirmish where both ships fire their cannons and do not hit each other because they're too far away, and no one knows exactly which one shot first, and then they both kind of run away in night, and then both claim the other one ran away. And then Peter Penguid like resigns because he's got too many morals. He's kind of mucho mas coded in that way. He's too moral to be a Confederate man of war captain. And then he just becomes a real estate mogul in California in the 1860s.
And builds wealth.
Yep.
So cool.
Yeah, Oedipa does sort of like a spit take because she finds him turning into sort of like a real estate mogul. So funny. And then the horseshoe conversation of Mike Fallopian goes, but that sounds, objected Metzger, like he was against industrial capitalism. Speaking of Peter Penguid, wouldn't that disqualify him as any kind of anti-communist figure? You think like a Bircher, Fallopian said. Good guys and bad guys. You never get to any of the underlying truth. Sure, he was against industrial capitalism. So are we. Didn't it lead inevitably to Marxism? Underneath, both are part of the same creeping horror. Industrial anything, hazarded Metzger. There you go. Nodded Fallopian.
Very funny to be against industrial capitalism
Anything.
because it leads to Marxism. Like it creating a movement, creating an anti-movement is a reason to be against the original movement. An enemy of an enemy.
Uh-huh.
Wait, no, that's the opposite. Not an enemy and an enemy is my friend. It is the enemy of my enemy is my bigger enemy.
Well, this is also just kind of like what Marx says. Like Marx is, at one point writes about how like capitalism is a necessary step away from feudalism before you get to communism. Like you can't make the transition from feudalism straight into communism. And like this becomes a debate in Marxism over in like can you get to communism from more of a feudal pre-industrialized social order, or do you have to go through sort of privatization before you can get to communism? And so if you're just against industrialization whole cloth because it may eventually lead to communism, then, you may find your people in the Peter Penguin Society.
Can we take a moment to talk about the Peter Penguin Society as a fictional entity created by Pynchon? Because of the 3 Pynchon things we've covered on the podcast, this and One Battle After Another both have...
Yeah. I was like, what is the third thing?
Both have like goofy right-wing underground groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And V does not. So I guess I'm just wondering, is this a thing that is introduced here and now in every subsequent Pynchon work are we going to find this type of group, do we think? Or is it just happenstance that there's 2 of them? Because the Crazy Christians Christmas
Adventurers.
Christmas
Yeah, there you
Adventurers
go.
Club, yeah, thank you. And the Peter Penguin Society seem very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They do seem related. I did feel as I was reading this that like Rooney Winsome would love this bar.
And the Peter
And
Penguin
the Peter,
Society.
yeah, I feel like the people in this bar are very up Winsome's alley, as is the like musical taste. But yeah, you're right. There's not really a secret cabal, if you will. Although, is the Peter Penguin Society like, is it secret or it? I mean, it doesn't seem quite as exclusive as the Christmas Adventurers Club.
Yeah, it seems less of a... I mean, there is a conspiracy associated with it because they're using official Yo-Yo-Dine channels and the like internal mail system in a conspiratorial way to communicate
can we talk
amongst
more
each
about
other.
the mail system?
Can we talk about the mail? I've been dying to talk about the mail.
They're really against the US's monopolization of the mail.
Yeah.
And to the point that the book referenced in the letter that we talked about a few minutes ago that Mike Fallopian is writing is about like the Civil War and then the years leading up to the Civil War and how the US nationalized the mail.
Wow, wouldn't they love FedEx, UPS, and Amazon?
When did FedEx and UPS like get going? So I was thinking about this and I was like, we have public
Let's see,
mail. Or we have private mail now.
1971 is FedEx.
Yeah.
No.
UPS has been around a while, though. It was founded in 1907.
I mean, I think that like the idea of private postage is like a long running thing. So we're not quite here yet, but this like Turn and Taxis company like was a real company in the 19th century.
Was the Pony Express private?
I literally just Googled the same thing. Yeah, I think that's
because
like...
it folded in like 6 weeks. The Pony Express, I think, is a real one of those things that we talk about a lot.
It has an outsized influence on pop culture.
Yeah,
for
like
its...
I think it was exceptionally expensive
I'm glad to
is
hear
my
you guys talked
understanding.
about this a lot. I was wondering if this was another like sort of Kansas-ism because it was headquartered in St. Joseph, Missouri.
No.
Yeah, so
everyone talks about them.
Everyone loves the Pony Express.
The Turn and Taxis private postal service was operated from 1806 to 1867, and I think grew out of some other semi-hereditary, like private postage type things. So yeah, I guess this has been, I mean, maybe this is in a V-esque sense, there's like a historical dialectic between whether the government or private industry should handle the mail, and that just oscillates back and forth like a sine wave.
The Pony Express was run by a stagecoach line.
Sure. Maybe they'll show up in Mason and Dixon.
Maybe so. Yeah, we've
Well,
already
Mason
had...
Dixon would have been way before the Pony Express.
Well, maybe they were like the baby Pony Express.
Ponies are baby horses.
Is that true?
No, I
No.
don't think so.
No, it's
I think
not
pony
true.
is a type of horse.
So yeah, Fallopian is writing a book about the government takeover of American postage.
And they're using, so there's like a mail call and like everyone in the bar runs to go get their like letters. And am I understanding, I got a little confused here. Am I understanding correctly that like they have co-opted Yo-Yo-Dine's inner office delivery system to like send messages to each other?
Yes.
Yeah, they're trying to undermine the mail, but they're using their company's internal memo system, and no one actually needs to send letters to each other, so they have a quota they have to write per week because otherwise they're not getting enough volume. And he makes it clear that I guess there are Peter Penguin societies throughout the country, even though Peter Penguin himself like settled in Southern California, but to his knowledge, only the San Narciso chapter has developed an internal mail system.
Patrick and I were just talking the other day about how it's wild that a lot of companies and organizations have required that their employees use AI a certain number of times each week. And I feel like that was really on par with requiring that everyone has to send at least one letter a week through the Yo-Yo-Dine system, whether or not you actually have anything to say.
Which just leads to totally useless letters and totally useless queries or what have you. I do think that this is another kind of Pynchon prescient thing of what happens when communication like proliferates past the point of usefulness, that you just have to keep sending messages and communicating as the systems for communication expand.
Sounds like my email inbox.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, he knew it was coming back in 1965.
I was thinking Snapchat streaks. Do you guys remember those?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Penguin Society would love Snapchat.
Peter Penguin Society would love Yik Yak, R.I.P.
No, Yik Yak's back, dude.
Is it?
Yeah, it's returned.
Good for Yik Yak.
It came back. No.
Bad
for society, good for Yik Yak.
Yeah, I wish I still had my free Yik Yak koozie that some company rep passed out to me at one point.
The Yik Yak Company?
Yeah. A subsidiary of Yo-Yo-Dine.
Yik Yak, Yo-Yo.
Yik Yak sounds like the two girls that
Yik and Yak.
Yik and Yak.
Yik and Yak.
Oedipa heads to the head and sees some writing on the wall. Interested in sophisticated fun? You, hubby, girlfriends, the more the merrier. Get in touch with Kirby through Waste only. Box 7391, LA. And then
it's a U.S. mailbox that isn't even that's at a U.S. postal service store.
But it's
ridiculous.
It's through Waste. What's Waste?
It's an acronym.
Just have to wait
Surely.
and see. It's all caps. And then underneath it, this weird little loop, triangle, and trapezoid.
Looks sort of like a horn, almost.
Yeah, I was thinking a horn with like one of the things in it. I don't know what that thing is called, but once in a while that you see the horn that has like something jammed in it, or you see someone like using like some to do like a whammy effect on the
like
horn.
A wow. It's called a mute.
Yeah, a mute.
If you turn it on its side, it looks kind of like a broom with like a plate attached to the top.
Yeah, that could be, yeah.
This is reminding me, and stop me if I've already brought this up on this podcast, but this is reminding me of this book that I had as a kid called Droodles.
Oh, you've shown me Droodles.
Yeah, where like they have
I'm
these
not aware of
weird
Droodles.
There are these weird little drawings that are sort of ambiguous what they are. And then you are supposed to come up with sort of like comical or like clever captions for like what's going on in the picture.
Kind of like the
oh yeah, here I
thematic
can post one.
apperception tests that Dr. Hilarious uses. I had to Google what those were.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, what do you think this is a picture of, Andrew? The first one.
It looks kind of like a bullseye pointed at a target.
Or is it
a scope pointed at a target?
Or is it 4 elephants examine an orange?
Yeah, kind of in a Hungry Hungry Hippos-esque situation. One marble left.
What about the one beneath that?
Smart. This one also looks like a target. Or perhaps it is like a single plate on a dining room table from above.
Or is it an aerial view of a cowboy in a porta-john?
Or a...
The second one is giving who's that Pokemon Jigglypuff from above?
Kind of, yeah. Now, here's a fun thing. On the Wikipedia page for Droodles, under C also, Kilroy was here.
What?
What?
God, okay, we're circling back to the background research I never got around to doing on Kilroy.
One of these days.
Whoa, is Kilroy is a Droodle?
Maybe.
Interesting.
These were cartoons by Roger Price, it looks like.
Anyways.
For the listener, the two that we were talking about are both the two on the Wikipedia page for Droodle.
I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah,
Droodle is spelled the way you expect it to be spelled.
Droodle.
It's a combination of doodle, drawing, and riddle.
Wow.
I don't know if riddle really gets in there, but sure.
Riddle. Anyways,
yeah, we've got
the drawing that Oedipa is looking at seemed very much like a Droodle to me.
And this is, we have officially reached, I would say, the single most common Thomas Pynchon tattoo option. I figured
that out while Googling.
Is this right here?
Some stuff about the Peter Penguin Society. Saw a lot of these tattoos. This is really the Thomas Pynchon Deathly Hallows.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the Thomas Pynchon Deathly Hallows. We're going to lose all of our subscribers for that.
It's the same exact shapes, just in a different order.
Yeah. Oh God, can you imagine the arm that you have one on one arm, the other on the other arm? You're just like, I contain multitudes.
I contain multitudes.
Do we leave the scope shortly after that and steal a boat?
Well, yes, but not. They don't leave to steal the boat. But yes, that is what happens.
Yeah. Before we get to the boat, there's another one of these lengthy meditations that I thought echoed the weird little strip Botticelli game from the previous chapter, where Pynchon writes, "So began for Oedipa the languid, sinister blooming of the Tristero, or rather her attendance at some unique performance, prolonged as if it were the last of the night, something a little extra for whoever'd stayed this late, as if the breakaway gowns, net bras, jeweled garters, and G-strings of historical figuration that would fall away were layered dense as Oedipa's own street clothes in that game with Metzger in front of the Baby Igor movie." And this idea of like conspiracy as a kind of striptease, like pulling back layers as a game of kind of sexual fascination, I found it kind of compelling.
It's interesting. I feel like it also connects back to our like tapestry imagery of like pulling threads at the or trying to like uncover what's under the tapestry that's covering up the truth. Like, which also, now that I said it out loud, reminds me of the nymph and her like clothing covering up.
Yeah, I don't know if we described that super well, but in case folks aren't following along with the book or it's been a while, there's like the big billboard with the nymph on it that has like actual pieces of cloth that are blowing off of it from fans, so you can see up underneath her clothes. The Paranoids are kind of like a new whole sick crew we've got. We got Miles, Dean, Serge, and Leonard, and all of their various girlfriends.
And they all go to spend a day at Fangoso Lagoons, which we learned during one of the commercial breaks was one of Pierce's sort of real estate investments.
Yeah, like whole big planned community. It has there's a plan for a sort of scuba entertainment complex where
there's a big man-made lake.
Yeah, big man-made lake. They've imported shipwrecks, and we soon learn perhaps some ill-begotten bones.
And then people can ostensibly like scuba at the bottom of this lake and see all this stuff that they've put in it.
And then go play golf, and then go to the grocery store, and then, do all you got to do in your suburb at Fangoso Lagoons. Here they meet Manny Depresso.
Was anyone else getting charisma vibes?
From Manny Depresso?
Yeah, they find him
he's
under a tarp.
Yes, I did.
They start to see this tarp moving around.
Yeah.
And then they like realize there's a person underneath.
For some reason, my brain went to like mafia, and then I was like, "Oh wait, yes, okay, yeah, yes."
I thought you just meant. You said that, and I was like, charisma doesn't do anything.
What is charisma's personality?
It's not really a kid. Like he doesn't have a personality. We don't talk to him.
Charisma vibes in the sense that he is also under a sort of blanket-like object.
Which they pull off of him, and again, in a very sort of cartoonish fashion, he's like standing there in a wetsuit and like wraparound sunglasses, and he's like, "I can explain. This makes a lot of sense."
They steal a boat.
Manny Depresso, like manic depressive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that was good. That's like the one I put together besides Oedipa. I was like, I know what this one is.
What about Dr. Hilarious?
Well, his jokes are good. I was like, yeah, I get it. We didn't talk about this. Manny Depresso has already been mentioned once.
Yeah.
So whereas Metzger is an actor turned lawyer, Manny is a lawyer turned would-be actor who has starred in a movie based on Metzger, which has never been released.
Yeah, he was in a pilot for a TV show
that has not been picked up. I think they describe it as in the basement of, whatever studio. And so he has had to go back to being a lawyer to make ends meet.
Yes, and he has been working in and around this mobster under the alias, or the mobster's name is Tony Jaguar. Depresso calls him Sfachim, perhaps in another V. We saw that word in V. We know what it means. And the Tony Jaguar was
I was going to say, didn't J. Cary Grant also write a companion to this? We need to see if he figured out what Safim meant.
Yeah,
Andrew meant by the second one.
I failed the pod, so I requested that from the library this week, and it came in yesterday, and I ran out of time to drive to the library and pick it up yesterday. So J. Cary Grant will be returning to our pod in the next episode.
J. Cary Grant will return in V Part 2, or in Lot 49 Part 2.
We just need to remember to go back to this and figure out if he knows what it means by the second book, if he's figured it out, or if it's just like a copy and paste from last time where he's like, we don't know what it means.
Patrick, can you edit that in when you're editing this podcast?
Yeah, sure. We'll figure out what he says. That'll get people to listen to the next episode. You gotta leave him hanging on something.
Yeah, this is our Vivaldi concerto on kazoos.
We gotta wrap up that plot line.
They're on the boat. They've got eggplant sandwiches. Put that in the cookbook.
That made me kind of hungry. Cookbook.
There's a couple other cookbook things from
right now.
The first chapter that I don't think we called out explicitly, but Oedipa is making some lasagna and garlic bread and romaine salad in the first chapter.
Classic.
Much more wholesome than the stuff that the whole sick crew is getting into the cookbook.
Yeah, I would much rather have Oedipa's lasagna than rat tails.
Yeah, or these eggplant sandwiches.
The eggplant sandwiches sounded divine. Even the seagulls thought they were good.
Manny Depresso explains this whole turning GI bones into cigarette filters business, that there was a platoon in Italy near the Lago di Pietà that were sort of isolated and eventually worn down by the offensive, and at some time after the war, or at some point, all of their bodies ended up at the bottom of the lake. After the war, Tony Jaguar, who was on the Italian side in World War II, figured that if he dredged them up, he could probably use them for something, because America was starting to be obsessed with sort of like war memorials and big budget cemeteries. It seems like, especially in Southern California, some of these were big time deals. And so eventually, one way or another, ends up sort of selling them through Inverarity into this cigarette filter con.
Yeah, if we thought this book was going to be like a light romp and not delve into some of the darker spaces that Thomas Pynchon went into in V, well, turns out that would be a wrong assumption.
Yep. It's still not quite as dark as some of the V heaviness.
Yeah, it's like adult men and not young women, at least. That makes it a little bit easier.
I guess it's like war, not genocide, but it's still like we're taking like the bones of sort of like dead soldiers and turning them into something that like we're capitalizing on, but also that we like smoke.
Yeah, they say at one point that this was like before the cancer, like all of the cancer linkages in cigarettes, which feels very much like a season 1 of Mad Men type thing, where they're like, we got to get around all this like cancer nonsense with this smoking.
That's where like the cowboy comes from. The Marlboro Man is a reaction to like having to add filters to cigarettes for like health reasons.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think filtered cigarettes were my understanding is filtered cigarettes were like only used by women and were thought of as very effeminate. So even though it was causing cancer, men didn't want to use filtered cigarettes, but they also didn't want to get cancer. And so Marlboro had to come up with like a macho guy to make filtered cigarettes cool.
Wow. Did it work?
Yeah, it worked really, really well.
But to be clear, filtered cigarettes still cause cancer.
Look, yes. I don't know. We're not doctors. We don't provide medical advice on this show. Smoke them if you got them.
That is not a statement that I endorse.
Don't smoke them if you got them.
Yeah, I feel like
Tony Jaguar claims to have not been paid. That is sort of why Manny is here, because a few of the bones were sunk into the lake, and
Tony Jaguar wants his money.
For small claims court.
I do feel like the bones, like the whole idea of these bones being used in the cigarettes, feels very in line with some of the like war industrial complex that has been a running theme thus far in Pynchon, with things that sort of were initially developed during the war, or like casualties or consequences of the war, then becoming a part of the sort of like post-war industry.
Yeah.
Or being like incorporated into everyday things that we purchase.
And also in sort of unorthodox ways. Like, I think Pynchon is really interested in the ways that like this thing that you may not think has anything to do with sort of the military industrial complex actually only exists because of the military-industrial complex. That seems to be a running theme.
Yeah, and we jump back to this a little bit later in the chapter, but Pynchon sort of refers to these like bones as fossils. Mildred?
Fossils.
Mildred, anyone?
She'll never leave us.
She'll never leave us. Anyways, I like was having thoughts about like what does it mean for like these like kind of like dead bones that have sort of like sunk to the bottom of the ocean where like ultimately they probably would turn into a fossil. I don't know a lot about how fossilization works. But
it could happen.
Then they're kind of like brought up and like incorporated in things. I feel like there's a lot of bone imagery going on in Pynchon. Like in V, I feel like there's a lot of ivory being turned into things and like
skulls, laughing faces,
yeah.
teeth.
Manipulation of bones by like plastic surgeons. So the bones are back is all I had to say.
I also want to we should give a shout out to the subsidiary that Pynchon creates here. Osteolysis Core is pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that Metzger's whole like return argument was like, oh, well, Tony probably doesn't think he was paid because of course he wasn't paid directly for these bones. It was surely like filtered through, you know, some subsidiary so that like no one would know that there were bones in the cigarette filters or whatever.
Yeah, the money is so laundered that no one even realizes that they've been paid.
He also argues that even though Pierce owns 51% of Beaconsfield, it was Beaconsfield who authorizes the purchase, and thus Pierce should not be on the hook.
Yeah, their hands are clean. Then one of the girls, a long-waisted, brown-haired lovely in a black knit leotard and pointed sneakers, says, "You know, blokes, this has a most bizarre resemblance that ill Jacobean revenge play we went to last week."
And then Oedipus like, well, I guess I got to see that play.
Yeah, the Courier's Tragedy.
And I did not anticipate that we were going to get the entire play.
The last 10 pages of the chapter.
Lo and behold, the Courier's Tragedy was not just a sort of casual reference, but a significant portion of this small book.
Before we get there really
slim
quick.
Slim volume.
Yeah, the slim volume. I just thought it was really funny. There's a brief scene where Manny takes the boat and Oedipus says, "Metzger," it occurred to her, "he's taking the boat? We're marooned." And then they sort of take the little stubs of their joints and blink SOS out into the ether until they get rescued. It's good. It's a good scene.
They get rescued by the like subdivision's security crew.
Yeah. And then we get the tank players performance of The Courier's Tragedy by Richard Warfinger.
I liked the description of where this theatrical performance took place.
Where's it taking place?
I said that and I wasn't prepared to read.
It's a small arena theater located out between a traffic analysis firm and a Wildcat transistor outfit.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like we've talked before about Thomas Pynchon maybe being a bit of a theater kid, and I definitely felt that way as we dove into this theatrical performance, and also thought the sort of like visual of this like theater company being in this kind of like industrial office park as interesting.
I mean, that's this whole book, is it's either in like an industrial like office complex, or it is in like a rigidly organized housing subdivision or like gated community.
Yeah, both I guess like symbols of kind of like sprawl, like the kind of like American wasteland.
Yeah, I think it's like a complicating, it's like a new vector from the sort of like hothouse street dynamic that we got in V, where now we have like, oh yeah, this is neither the city nor is it the street. It's this new thing that we're calling the suburbs, and we're stuck here, and it's hell.
Yeah, there's industry, there's like office strips, there's sort of housing subdivisions.
There's one bar, and it's basically just work for the people who are at this this plant nearby.
Yeah, like you can drive and drive and drive, and it feels like freedom, but actually you're like trapped in this kind of endless sprawl.
So yeah, why don't one of y'all take it away. Just do a quick gloss on the plot of The Courier's Tragedy.
A quick 10-page gloss.
The ins and outs, the machinations.
Violent performance, building off of the previous violent performance that we saw in V. I mean, not building off in a literal way, just like also quite violent stage performance.
So in the context of this novel, this is a play by Richard Warfinger, a 17th century playwright whose work has been was found by the director in an anthology of these kind of Jacobean revenge plays.
It's written in verse.
It is, as the book describes it, Oedipa finds herself, after 5 minutes, sucked utterly into the landscape, this, quote, pre-apocalyptic, death-wishful, sensually fatigued, unprepared, a little poignantly, for that abyss of civil war that had been waiting, cold and deep, only a few years ahead of them, which sounds kind of very much like a lot of the Stencil chapters in V, this kind of pre-apocalyptic sentiment that devolves into depravity and violence. And here we have the main characters are this Angelo, who is the Duke of Squamuglia, and then Niccolo, who is the principal, the, quote, rightful heir and good guy of the play. They're kind of in two rival city-states or kingdoms, duchies, whatever you want to call them.
The play has 5 acts, so it's like super long.
We're all really beating around the bush of actually saying what happens in the play, and I know I don't want to.
I don't want to either.
I've read it twice, and it's so convoluted. So what if we just try to work through it together?
Yeah.
Angelo, sort of at the beginning of the play, but sort of 10 years before the main actions of the play, kills Niccolo's father.
Yep.
And helps install Pasquale.
Yep.
Into power in the rival kingdom.
Yes.
And Pasquale tries to kill Niccolo, but Ercole, who's a guy, is pro Niccolo, and he saves Niccolo and then like shoots a goat out of a cannon instead of shooting Niccolo out of a cannon.
Yep.
Take it away, Patrick. We're going to do this round robin.
Meanwhile, Niccolo is masquerading as a male courier for the Turn and Taxis family, which had this postal business, or a postal monopoly, as it says here. I don't know that the dates exactly line up for the real world Turn and Taxis family postal situation, but here they're happening in the 17th century or whatever. No one knows who he is. We've got a classic sort of Shakespearean case of disguised identity. Again, the disguises are back, and Angelo tries to marry his sister,
who's actually his mother.
Is that right?
To
Angelo
Pasquale.
Angelo and Francesca are siblings, and he wants to marry Francesca to Pasquale, but Pasquale is Francesca's son.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And they're trying to merge the empires.
They involve the church in here.
Church ain't into it.
Church is not into it.
They torture the bishop.
Yeah, there's several scenes it's several acts that are basically just the murder and torture of a singular personage.
There was a really funny interjection where someone in the audience sort of like loudly says "ick," which I feel like could sum up my response to a good chunk of this play.
Yeah, Metzger says, "Ick, you want to go? I want to see about the bones," said Oedipa. But the bones don't come up until Act 4, when the lost guard of one of these kingdoms, the Lost Guard of Faggio, which is Italian for birch or beech, I think, like the tree, but it is also where certain slurs are derived, from the like beeches and sticks and that whole like Latin derivation. Then squamulia, as far as I can tell, does not really have an etymology, but maybe J. Cary Grant next week can elucidate if it actually has one. Basically, Angelo kills and disposes of the guard of the Knights of Faggio. Niccolo, quote, observes that if the two events turn out to be at all connected and can be traced to Duke Angelo, boy, the Duke had better watch out, is all. So again, we have this like, someone is trying to put two things that seem unrelated together in order to figure out history and make progress. There's an orgy. There's a guy in a gorilla costume.
Pasquale gets killed.
Pasquale gets killed.
Then it's intermission. That's when the intermission takes place.
Yep.
Then there's
Oedipa like looks around the bathrooms because she's looking for more clues and there aren't any, and she feels like oddly disquieted that like the bathrooms are free of graffiti.
A guy named Gennaro takes over the kingdom because Pasquale is dead, and
yes,
he's
and
about to send in.
They don't know where Niccolo is, so he's sort of like installed as a temporary leader until they can find Niccolo.
Yeah, he's about to march an army into into Angelo's kingdom, and that is when Niccolo, as a courier for Therm and Taxis, is sent with a letter to Gennaro to not invade, but Nicola is killed by some assassins.
And the assassins are interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, I did not follow this plot well when I read through this, and I don't know that I'm following it any better this time as we're running through it as a group, although I applaud both of you.
It is meant to be extremely confusing.
For this level of detail. But I thought, I did pick up on like the interesting assassins that come for Niccolo.
Yeah, what's interesting about the assassins?
Yeah, so first of all, like they talk about, as they're talking about this performance, and by they I mean, I guess, like the narrator, they said like the vibe of the performance shifts a little bit, and there's this what they call a sort of like ritual reluctance to talk about certain things, and so all the characters are like giving each other like knowing looks when they're like referring to certain things, sort of like conspiratorial eyes being made at each other. Oh yeah, significant looks with a capital S and a capital L. And saying it's like there's all a big in-joke going on between the people and the play, but the audience doesn't know what's going on.
There's a quote, certain things, it is made clear, will not be spoken aloud. Certain events will not be shown on stage, though it is difficult to imagine, given the excesses of the preceding acts, what these things could possibly be.
I thought that was funny. Anyways, it seems like part of what they are referring to or not referring to through these significant looks is this like crew of assassins who are described as suddenly in lithe and terrible silence, with dancer's grace, three figures, long-limbed, effeminate, dressed in black tights, leotards, and gloves, black silk hose pulled over their faces, come capering on stage and stop, gazing at him. Their faces behind the stockings are shadowy and deformed. They wait. The lights all go out. And then we later find out that like Niccolo was like horribly killed by this sort of like trio
Yeah, after uttering, quote, the shortest line ever written in blank verse, t, 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 t.
Yeah, so that was like really spooky. I felt like the rest of this play was like kind of like almost comical. Like there was a lot of torture, but it seemed like a kind of bad play. Like the plot was really convoluted. Like the torture seemed in excess. Like it just keeps going. Like we're like not getting to the point.
There's several orgies that have to happen.
Orgies. There's like gratuitous violence.
Which are all the things that are, as we mentioned, reading the Jacobean etiology of Esther's eventual trip to Cuba. Like these are all the stereotypical qualities of Jacobean revenge plays, is that they're violent and twisted and kind of convoluted.
Yeah, and there's even like, I felt like there were even elements of like, and maybe I'm mixing up my theatrical traditions here, but I felt like there were even elements of like commedia dell'arte a little bit, with like all these people like coming in and out and like seemed very fast paced. And there was one point where I feel like everyone was described as like running around like a Roadrunner cartoon. A Roadrunner cartoon in blank verse.
Yeah, I liked that line.
So yeah, we've got like a little bit of like absurdity going on in the rest of this play, but this part actually felt like quite spooky with this like trio coming in. And it felt like, at least the way it was described, it seemed like this element of ritual reluctance and then the introduction of this like crew of 3 felt like the play was suddenly like doing something interesting that it wasn't doing in the rest of the 4 acts.
Well, and notably, not to jump ahead, but since you describe it that way, Oedipa soon has a conversation with the director, and the director says that he added this part. Mm-hmm. That the assassins are not on stage in the original text, but he added that in. Which I think goes to your point about it, like it is narrated differently and supposedly feels kind of different than, or more explicit than whatever it is, this thing that no one is explicitly talking about.
Yeah, so then do we ever get to the bones?
Yes, so it turns out that the special ink that Angelo's letter was written in, this pitchy brew in France is encre height. In this might dire Squamulia ape the Gaul, for anchor it has risen from deeps untold. This ink is made with the bones of the lost company of knights, and suddenly is a different letter that is found on Niccolo's body than the one that he was originally carrying, which is this lengthy confession of all of the misdeeds of Angelo. So either something magical or something sinister or something has happened and the letter no longer is what it was previously, is the business here. And then we get use of this word tristero. He that we lass as Thurn and Taxus knew, now recks no lord but the stiletto's thorn, and tacit lies the gold once knotted horn. No hallowed skein of stars can ward, I trow, who's once been set his tryst with Tristero. Is it skein or skein? I've never known how to pronounce that word.
I thought it was skein, but
Maybe it's skein.
I don't know that I've ever said that word out loud.
Yeah.
Whoops. Sorry, listener.
Yeah, so Tristero, I guess, is referring to this crew of assassins, was what I gathered.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Yep. And that leads Gennaro to invade Squamulia and kill everyone there, and he is, by the end, kind of the last person standing in kind of like a King Learish way, or really there's a lot of like Hamlet in this, of course, as well, with the sort of prince who was wronged, and by the end of the play some other guy entirely is the last one who's alive.
The whole time I was reading this play, about the play, and then the second time as well, I just couldn't shake the thought that it would be a really good high school like it'd be a great play for like a high school production. And I couldn't really decide why I was thinking that, because it's obviously like hyper violent and also there's a bunch of orgies. And I think what it reminds me of is the Vietnam War play at the end of Rushmore,
Yeah.
which is also very violent and sexy. And so I think it would be a good play. If there's any like high school drama teachers out there who maybe want to flesh this plot line out, it would be good. I think it would be a real fun one.
It's got room for a really big
It
ensemble.
probably exists.
Yeah.
So I feel like
exactly. Lots of people. It's like a good, you hear sometimes about teachers being like, we have to read like these classic novels, but like I will suggest sometimes that students read like much more pulpy or like sexy stuff just to get them into reading. And this would be a great way to get people into acting. Like it is not, you don't need to have everyone doing 12th Night every year when you have the Courier's Tragedy.
I took a drama class in college and we read, it was like old, I'm forgetting the exact time period, but it was like old plays.
Old Drama
plays
306.
Class. And it was about like basically it was like these you took this class too, Patrick. It was like these at a different time than me, but like
no, I took early American drama.
Oh, I think mine
different.
was in like they were European, but it was like not the best period in European drama. It was like not Shakespeare and it wasn't like contemporary, and it like all the plays we read were like not all of them, but like many of them you were like, oh, I see why this wasn't really a lasting work necessarily, because it like wasn't that great. And I feel like this is a good example of like, oh, maybe the script for this still exists in the world, but it wasn't a classic because it's not very good.
Well, yeah, and to per this book, this play is not reprinted frequently. It is like in an edited volume of like, here's some Jacobean dramas. And when Oedipa goes backstage to chat with the director, he's like, you can probably find the used book. I don't know where the book was. We just have these photocopies of the script now. Yeah, do we want to talk about Oedipa going backstage? She admits that she's a young Republican, which I think is funny. Because Metzger's like, can we just go? And she's like, I'm still weirded out by these GIs and their bones are being like used for cigarettes, and like we should really get to the bottom of these. Like we need to have some respect for the boys who sacrificed for us. And Metzger kind of goes on a tirade about like the patriot idealism of Oedipa, but she explains to him that it's not necessarily that, but she does have like an itch here that she wants to scratch about like why does this play have the bone thing, and also the bone thing is tied up in Pierce's estate, etc., etc.
Yeah, she says, I want to see if there's a connection. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I feel like if Stencil would have just admitted that to himself.
What would be different?
Much like healthier mentally.
Yeah,
I
I just feel like he would have been in a better place if he could have admitted that like he was just curious.
Yeah. So she goes backstage, and it turns out Driblette is the director who played Gennaro in the play, and he insists, you came to talk about the play, he said. Let me discourage you. It was written to entertain people. Like horror movies, it isn't literature. It doesn't mean anything. Warfinger was no Shakespeare. Then later on, he says in some, I think, a revealing section, you don't understand, you guys, you're like Puritans are about the Bible, so hung up with words. And he says that like it doesn't really matter all these words that are like written down. Like the play is in my brain. Like I make the play. I am the actor. I perform the play. The play happens in front of you. It's entertainment, and then you can forget about it.
Yeah, he has some like choice words to say about like criticism. He says you can put together clues, develop a thesis or several about why characters reacted to the Tristero possibility the way they did, why the assassins came on, why the black costumes. You could waste your life that way and never touch the truth. Warfinger supplied words in a yarn. I gave them life. That's it.
Yep.
It's important to know that he's taking a shower this whole time. I don't know if you mentioned that.
We did not mention that.
He's in a shower and he just like occasionally is sticking his head out of the steam.
He's taking like a cartoon shower where there's like a big puffy cloud of steam that is like engulfing him and only him. And then he like occasionally pokes body parts out of it.
Yeah, he's the one who talks eventually a little bit about fossils.
Yeah. And the words are the fossils.
The fossils. They would be traces, fossils, dead, mineral, without value or potential, which kind of drew me together with like, okay, the words are fossils. We've got these bones as fossils. There's like...
the facts of the like historical facts of the play are fossils. Thurn and Taxus mail system is a fossil.
Yeah, I like my brain jumped to sort of like ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We've got these like bones being ground up into like dust to be used in a cigarette, which is smoked and then crumbles into ashes. And anyways, a lot of bone, fossil, dust imagery. I guess there was dust at the used car lot too, like the salad of despair.
But like Oedipa walks away from the meeting going like, I went in to ask about the bones, but he mainly kept talking about like this Tristero business, but then didn't really seem to want to talk about Tristero either. So she leaves maybe more confused than she was when she came in.
Yeah.
And in on the car, over the car radio, she realizes like after a little while that she's been listening to Mucho talk at her.
Do you think she's going... So she asked him like where the original script for the play was, and he was like, oh, I bought it at this used bookstore, Zap's Used Books. But someone else like took it. And she was like, who? Anyways, I was wondering if in a subsequent chapter she might go to this used bookstore and see if she could find another copy.
Well, it wouldn't be the first
surely
sort of like hard-boiled novel to have a used bookstore in it, because that's it's in The Big Sleep. They go to the used bookstore, and in the Humphrey Bogart movie, obviously.
Indeed.
They go way back, used bookstores. That's our first 3 chapters of The Crying of Lot 49. Now that we've talked about it, how different do we think it feels from V? Does this feel like it could just be a like side story of the whole V business?
It feels
this could have just been like a 100-page chapter in V, I feel like, and we wouldn't have noticed.
If V were 800 pages instead of...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I feel like authors sometimes like sort of write in a world, like they have like a world that exists, and then they write different novels that take place in the world, and the novels don't necessarily intersect, but like they have little pieces of the world or like common characters or places that show up.
Faulkner does this with whatever it is. County is like where a lot of his novels are.
Yeah. Anyways, I felt like that was kind of what was happening here, was like we're getting a picture into like a different slice of the same world. I mean, ostensibly it's our world, but the same kind of space that...
Plus or minus a few colorful characters.
Yeah. The same space that Pynchon was writing in V, just like a different perspective, different coast.
Yeah.
Slightly different time period.
I do feel like it is interesting. It feels written like roughly around the same time. Like this book came out not long after V came out. And I think V probably had a bit of a longer writing process based on what we know about it and the way that it like incorporates some material from some of his like early short stories. Feels like V took him several years, whereas this feels like it may have been written under a quicker turnaround. But I do think it shows more of like, it feels a little more intentional or like less slapdash, these movements between the kind of like slapstick dialogue heavy or like cartoonish scenes into the more reflective, longer form, extremely long, twisty sentences. Like, I think some of those movements are like a little bit smoother than they were in V. Or maybe they're just like quicker and you don't notice the transition quite as much because it's so dense.
I will say, like, I enjoyed the framing devices in V maybe more than I'm enjoying. Like, reading that play plot was like kind of excruciating.
Well, I couldn't help but think that it would have been a whole chapter in V. Like, we would have just gotten like the beat for beat plot told like as a stencilized version.
But I don't know, I found all the stencilized stories, like I found Stencil's chapters really interesting. Those were some of my favorite chapters of the book. And I'm like not sure that I'm finding the like in-depth engagement with these like media objects quite as interesting as I found Stencil's adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I like had a hard time with the very large section about the play, and maybe the payoff will come. But I don't know.
What about you, Andrew?
I think it's interesting. These are the first couple of chapters, and I'm trying to cast my mind back to what it felt like the first like 2 or 3, like what we talked about in like the first episode for V, because this does not feel like it has the same like meandering pacing to it the way V did, where we'd get plot development, but then you'd have like long passages about time and about the repetition of time and all the things that we've been talking about for 10 episodes now. And that hasn't happened here yet. And I guess I don't really remember the first couple chapters and what we talked about so much for V to know if it's just because it's the first couple chapters and you have to introduce some characters before you start having them ruminate on things.
Yeah.
Or if that is a product of this being a book that was written because there had to be a manuscript handed in and it is only 120 pages and not 500.
I think if I'm thinking back to the first couple chapters of V, a thing that stands out as being kind of crying of lot 49 like is Rachel looking at that clock in Schoenmaker's office. Like, I feel like that is the kind of thing that Oedipa would sort of harp on and have thoughts about for 5 pages.
Yeah, I mean, remember how I kept saying that like Rachel kept getting lost in reveries?
Yes.
In that one episode, I feel like, Oedipa and everybody else in this book, honestly, keeps getting lost in kind of like these reveries where they're musing on different things, or the narrator almost seems to get kind of like carried away with like descriptions of their thoughts.
Yeah, but it's also yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, it just feels like to this point, the only thing that's felt very V to me is the section about the Remedios Varo painting. Like that feels like the thing that most likely could fit into V, and it would just fit perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the characters and like the settings feel like just a continuation of V. Like these are totally like settings that we could find our characters in V in, but like the writing style feels a bit different.
The general kookiness.
Yeah. Well, we shall see how that progresses and how our thoughts progresses as we move forward. So next time we'll be reading chapters 4 and 5. So you can look forward to that. And thank you very much for listening to Pynchon Pals. And thank you to Andrew Tillett.
Thank you.
And to Duri Long.
Thank you
for joining me. If, and there's a big if, you like what we're doing here, we'd love it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you want to leave that review. If you'd like to get in touch with the show or submit a question for us to answer on a future Q&A, you can reach us at pynchonpals@gmail.com. We had a great time doing the last one. We are looking forward to doing more. To support the work we do here, you can newly head to patreon.com/pynchonpals. Give it a look-see. If you feel so motivated, you can sort of directly show your support for the show, and we, of course, greatly appreciate that. Our theme music is Horology by the inimitable King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, released under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives license on the album Polygon Dwanaland. Pynchon Pals is produced and edited by me, Patrick Fiorilli. You can find more of my work alongside my newsletter, Critical Theory Craft, at my website, www.patf.io. Until next time.
See you later, alligator. Can we still say that?
I think we can, until we find something better.
Yeah.
Do you have a better idea?
Good, like, I was thinking like maybe a KCUF like radio-esque sign off. But I'm not sure what that I don't know enough about radio sign offs. What would that be like?
Yeah, I was seeing if there was anything from the Courier's tragedy that I could find here, but I got nothing.
I feel like Up First always ends with like their names, doesn't it? And like this was Up First.
This was Pynchon Pals? Maybe we just keep it at see you later,
yeah.
alligator. Run that back again.
I'll work on that one.
Until next time.
See you later, alligators.
There we go.
We can have a KCUF riff at the top of one of the last two episodes where it's like,
I like that.
Welcome. I don't know. Again, I don't know how radio
You're
shows
listening
work.
To KCUF.
But hornier, Patrick. Hornier.
Broadcasting from Kinneret, California.
Kinneret among the pines.
Yeah, there you go. 1,000 watts of raw power.
Yeah, we need to go full shock jock.
I gotta listen to some radio shows.